Hello guys, tonight we begin a quiet, slow journey into the heart of the 19th century, a time of oil lamps and lace curtains, coal fires and ticking clocks, when wallpaper could whisper secrets and furniture had memories carved into its joints. Tonight's story is all about how people decorated their homes in the 1800s, not just what was placed where, but why, and what those choices said about the people who lived there. We're going to walk through those rooms together, softly, quietly, as if they still held the warmth of those who once lived inside them. Before we begin, I'd love to know where you're listening from, and what time it is there. You can leave a little note in the comments, just your city or country, and whether the moon is high yet. It always amazes me where stories travel. Now, I want you to take a moment, put the day down, nestle into the weight of your blankets, or the curve of your pillow. Let your shoulders lower, a little more. There. Let your breath fall gently into a slower rhythm. You're safe, you're warm, and all you have to do now is listen. Tonight, you're not here anymore. You're standing at the gate of a modest townhouse in the year 1842. A narrow London street yawns behind you, shrouded in the low grey hush of a rainy dusk. The air smells of wet stone, iron, and faint soot from a dozen chimney pots. A lamplighter is finishing his route farther down the road, his torch hissing as he raises it to the last unlit lantern. The street glows now, not brightly, but warmly. You pull your shawl tighter around your shoulders, fingers catching on a button. The fabric is wool, scratchy and damp, and your boots are heavy with city grime, but you're not here to wander the street. You've been invited. The letter was pressed into your hand just yesterday, written in a careful copper plate, folded with a pale blue ribbon. You didn't recognise the handwriting, but it felt familiar, as if someone knew you'd come, and so you did. You step forward, lifting the wrought iron knocker. It's shaped like a lion's head, burnished from years of use. A quiet clunk echoes through the house, and then a hush. A heartbeat of stillness before the door swings open. There's no one there, only a corridor of soft gaslight, the scent of beeswax and coal smoke drifting out toward you. The floor inside is wood, narrow planks stained almost black with age, and a narrow runner of faded red and green damask leads deeper in. The wallpaper is striped with cream and rose, rising to meet a white-painted cornice lined with delicate egg and dart moulding. You step inside. The door closes gently behind you. This house, like many from this time, breathes slowly. Every sound is muffled. Every corner holds a trace of memory. You move softly, your steps barely audible on the worn rug. You're in a Victorian hallway. To your left, a hat stand of turned oak, tall and solemn, holds a single silk bonnet and a man's top hat, dark grey with a small dent in the crown. A black umbrella, its handle carved in the shape of a greyhound's head, leans beside it. Beside that, a washstand with a small mirror and a bowl of pale lavender water to freshen your hands after the city. Even here, at the very threshold, the care taken with design is clear. Ornament is not merely added, it is the very language of the home. A row of tiny porcelain tiles lines the base of the wall, each one painted with a different floral motif. Delphiniums, lilies, violets, all in cobalt and russet hues. They're Dutch, probably imported, a subtle show of taste and means. But this house is not grand. It is respectable, middle class. The owner may be a clerk, or a minor civil servant, someone literate, someone gentle, a person who believes that beauty, especially in the home, is a balm against the greyness of the world outside. You remove your gloves, slowly. The air inside is warmer than expected. Somewhere deeper in the house, a fire crackles. You begin to move. Ahead of you, the corridor narrows. The walls here are painted a deeper ochre, a muddy golden tone popular in the 1830s and 40s, made with linseed oil and earth pigments. Paint, back then, came in powdered form, mixed by hand, and colour, unlike today, was chosen with care. Not merely for brightness, but for its meaning. Yellow brought light, red brought warmth, and blue, well, blue was precious. A frame sampler hangs crookedly on the wall, a child's work, stitched letters and a floral border in shades of olive and plum, dated 1836. It reads, "Home is the heart's hearth, a small thing, but not meaningless." As you take another step, you notice the faint glint of a glass doorknob, cut like crystal, set into a brass plate with a floral motif. The Victorians loved nature. Even when pressed into iron or carved into wood, ivy and fern and rose motifs twined through their homes, linking indoors to out. It was a comfort in cities where greenery was rare. You pause at the doorway. Behind it lies the first true room of the house, a parlour perhaps, or a drawing room, the place where guests were received, where taste was displayed like a calling card, but we'll go there in the next part. Tonight, let the image stay with you. The quiet house, the amber gaslight, the sound of rain brushing against the windows, the smell of beeswax polish and coal smoke, the walls, padded in striped paper and stories. A home waiting to show you how the 1800s truly lived. Room by room, colour by colour, soul by soul, you're here now, and there's nowhere else to be. Let sleep come softly. You press your fingers lightly against the cool glass of the doorknob and turn it slowly until the latch clicks free and the door swings open with a low creak, revealing the parlour beyond. The air changes as you step inside, quieter somehow, denser with scent and texture. This is not just a room, it is a statement, a gesture, a reflection of the household's aspirations and anxieties, carefully arranged in upholstery, fabric and form. The floor is covered wall to wall in a patterned Brussels carpet, a dense weave of muted rusts and greens and dark blues, forming a sprawling floral design beneath your feet, the kind that swallows dust and footfalls alike. It is slightly worn near the threshold, but not threadbare. The furniture sits like solemn guests around the room's edges, pushed back slightly from the centre, in a way that allows conversation to unfold easily from one corner to another. Each piece is heavy and dark, made of mahogany or rosewood, polished until the curves of the arms and legs gleam faintly in the firelight. To your right, a sofa with a high back and turned wooden leg sits beneath the main window, its upholstery tight and buttoned in a damask pattern of faded burgundy and gold. It is not designed for lounging, but for posture, for hosting, for being seen sitting correctly while one discusses the weather or recent publications in the Gentleman's Magazine. Above the sofa hangs a large mirror in a gilt frame, carved with acanthus leaves and tiny cherubic faces. The mirror's glass is slightly clouded at the edges, bearing the faint patina of time, and it reflects the flickering gaslight from the wall sconce beside it, multiplying the room's warm shimmer. The sconce is a recent addition. Gaslighting has only just become common in homes like this, and its fixtures are modest. Brass arms holding small frosted globes, each etched with a faint floral motif. The wallpaper behind them is thick and velvety to the eye, a damask of olive and ochre, embossed and possibly flocked, designed not only to catch light but to impress it into memory. You notice the way the room is layered. Lace curtains in the windows, overlaid by heavier velvet drapes drawn back with tasselled cords. On the mantelpiece, a marble clock with gilded hands ticks softly between two porcelain vases filled with dried lavender and heather. A small china dog, white with a cobalt blue collar, guards the base of the clock, flanked by a pair of painted Staffordshire figurines. Shepherd and shepherdess, arms frozen mid-gesture. They do not match, but they have clearly been arranged to look as though they belong together. In the far corner stands a whatnot, a narrow tiered shelving unit, crowded with knick-knacks, tiny framed silhouettes cut from black paper, a polished conch shell, a mother-of-pearl snuff box, and a small painted teacup with a crack spidering from its rim. The Victorians loved collections, not just for display, but for what they signified. Curiosity, refinement, a quiet affluence. Even in a modest home like this one, the parlour served as the public face of the family's private story. A visitor would understand the household's values not by what was said aloud, but by what was chosen to remain visible. Near the hearth, a low table stands ready with a needlework basket and a rolled-up newspaper, its front page folded back to reveal a column on colonial trade. The needlepoint work is mid-progress, a rose beginning to bloom in soft pink thread against a field of pale green. This is the woman's corner, most likely. It faces the fire, angled slightly toward the window, allowing for both light and warmth depending on the time of day. Beside it, a slipper chair with a low back and no arms, practical for sewing, rests on curved cabriolet legs, ending in small brass casters. Its upholstery is faded but cared for, the surface slightly puckered with use. The room smells faintly of coal smoke, beeswax and lavender water, with a trace of something floral you can't quite place, perhaps a sachet tucked into a drawer or cushion. You move toward the hearth. The fireplace is black marble, with a cast iron grate filled with glowing coals. On the surround, hand-painted tiles show pastoral scenes, cows in meadows, a distant mill, a single rowboat floating on a glassy lake. These tiles, though decorative, also reveal the influence of the aesthetic movement beginning to take root. Beauty for its own sake, a quiet rebellion against the industrial harshness pressing in from the outside world. The room is hushed, padded by the weight of fabric and intention. Nothing here is accidental. Even the choices that appear casual are rehearsed, curated. On the table near the window sits a crystal decanter with 2 small port glasses, untouched. A book lies open beside them, face down to preserve a page. The binding is tooled leather, cracked at the spine. Its title glimmers faintly in the lamplight. Manners and Morals of the Middle Classes, 1839. There is a sense that someone has just left the room, or perhaps is waiting for you to arrive. You walk slowly to the centre and stand still. The fire murmurs. The mirror watches. Outside, the rain continues to fall, and you begin to understand the philosophy that guides every element of this space. Not merely decoration, but a belief that the home is a reflection of inner order, morality, and civility. That to live rightly is to surround oneself with beauty, but a particular kind of beauty. Restrained, moral, symbol-laden. The parlour is not only for comfort, it is for performance, for reverence, for presentation. The door behind you remains open, the hallway still visible in its golden hush. But ahead, another door stands slightly ajar, leading perhaps to the dining room. You can already sense the shift, the change in atmosphere and purpose. This room has told you what it needed to. The story continues just beyond that threshold. You pass through the doorway into a room that feels immediately heavier, darker, not in a gloomy way, but with a solemn kind of weight, as though the walls themselves have been steeped in ritual and repetition. The dining room is larger than you expected, a little too long for its width, and the ceiling feels lower here even though it isn't, as if the room is drawing you downward into itself. The light is dimmer too. There are no wall sconces here, only a central gasolier with 3 arms, each with a bell-shaped globe of frosted glass, suspended from an ornate medallion in the plaster ceiling. The flames behind the glass flicker softly, casting shadows that catch the moulding and make it seem to move when you're not looking directly at it. The wallpaper is different now, deeper in tone, more assertive, a deep burgundy ground patterned with golden vines and urns that repeat with symmetrical insistence, a popular pattern in the 1850s, influenced by classical revival tastes that had filtered down into middle-class homes through illustrated design journals and exhibitions. The room breathes Victorian values, symmetry, containment, meaning in every motif. The baseboards are painted a glossy dark brown, perhaps faux, grained to imitate walnut, and the wainscoting above them is a painted imitation of panelling, with stenciled flourishes meant to give the illusion of carved relief. These are economical choices, clever ones. Not everyone could afford carved oak, but paint could be made to lie convincingly if done carefully. The dining table dominates the centre of the room, long and narrow with 6 high-backed chairs around it, and 2 more placed slightly farther from the table, waiting. The chairs are made of mahogany, their backs pierced in Gothic shapes, and the seats are covered in black horsehair, stiff, durable, chosen for its practicality rather than comfort. The table itself is polished to a soft gleam, and has been laid not for dinner, but as if it had only recently been cleared. 2 placemats remain, each with a small ceramic salt cellar, a folded linen napkin, and a shallow soup plate edged in cobalt blue with gold banding. There's a silver cruet set at the table's centre, oil, vinegar, mustard, on a small mirrored tray that catches the lamplight and scatters it upward in glints. The silver is worn in places, the mirror is scratched, but everything is in order. You move along the edge of the room, your hand brushing against a sideboard pushed against the far wall. It's broad and low, with 2 small cupboards on either side and 3 drawers between them. The top is arranged with formal precision. A tiered cake stand, empty but dusted faintly with sugar, a pair of matching porcelain serving dishes with lids shaped like seashells, and a pair of brass candlesticks with pale yellow tapers that have never been lit. Over the sideboard hangs a dark, still life painting in a heavy wooden frame. Grapes, a goblet, and a dead pheasant laid across a table. It is rich, sombre, unmistakably continental in style. It seems older than the rest of the room, perhaps a family heirloom or a second-hand acquisition meant to lend gravity to the space. The carpet underfoot is not as lush as in the parlour, but denser, more tightly woven, with a Persian-style pattern dominated by reds and creams. The Victorians adored Oriental carpets, not only for their complexity but for what they suggested: worldliness, taste, and a familiarity with empire. Even if this one is a machine-made imitation, its presence carries that same layered meaning. On the wall opposite the sideboard, a narrow cabinet with a glass door displays a modest but proud collection of teaware. Porcelain cups and saucers, mostly mismatched but arranged by colour, with tiny gilt initials on some of them. Below, a shelf with cut glass dessert bowls, a pair of silver-plated tongs, and a sugar shaker with a hinged lid. The dining room, more than any other space in the Victorian home, was a room of display, not merely of goods, but of etiquette, structure, and belonging. Meals were formal events, even modest ones. A plain dinner might include 3 courses served in sequence, and even small households adhered to rituals of passing, serving, folding, waiting. The arrangement of furniture, the presence of china, the very thickness of the curtains all contributed to the emotional register of the meal. Controlled, respectable, elevated. Every item had its place, and every guest was expected to understand theirs. You glance toward the corner where a small writing desk sits beneath a narrow shelf lined with books. This detail feels unexpected, almost personal, as though one of the residents liked to take notes here after meals, or perhaps to write letters while the room cooled. There's a bottle of ink with a cracked wax seal and a bundle of paper tied with string beside it. On the wall above, pinned with a brass tack, is a clipping from the Illustrated London News, a sketch of a dining room almost exactly like this one, but grander, richer, with servants in livery and crystal chandeliers. The aspiration is clear, and yet there's something dignified in the modesty of this room, in its careful balance of imitation and individuality. You walk slowly back toward the table. The smell in the room is faint but familiar: coal dust and polish, a trace of meat and cloves. The hearth in this room is unlit, its grate clean. A fire here would be lit only for company or on colder evenings. Still, the fireguard is in place, black iron with a decorative motif, perhaps cast in the form of vines. Above the mantel, a small shelf holds 2 decorative plates in wire stands, one showing a pastoral scene, the other a romantic ruin, both done in transferware blues. Between them, a miniature bust of Queen Victoria, ivory-toned, her profile gentle and young. There are no children's drawings here, no casual objects left lying about. This room is curated for formality and inspection, where the act of dining is also the act of performing middle-class respectability. To sit at this table was to know your place, at the head or along the side, and to observe the customs that came with it. Even the colours here seem to suggest silence: dark wood, deep reds, aged brass. You begin to sense how colour functioned not just as decoration, but as instruction, as signal: red for dignity, gold for gentility, blue for quiet command. At the far end of the room, a door leads to the scullery or the kitchen perhaps, a servant's door, narrow, painted the same colour as the wall to make it less visible. You won't go through it tonight. Not yet. The heartbeat of the home lies behind that door, the smells, the labour, the untidiness that gives meaning to the polish of this room. You turn slowly, letting your fingers skim the carved edge of a chair back, and step once more into the corridor. The parlour is still visible through its open door, glowing faintly like the memory of a conversation. The dining room now stands behind you, darker, heavier, settled. Ahead, you glimpse another space, smaller, with a square of daylight-coloured glass flickering in the distance. It's time to move forward. The next room is quieter, more private, a place where comfort begins to outweigh display. You pass back through the corridor, your footfalls absorbed by the long runner whose pattern you've only now begun to notice. Faint roses, or perhaps pomegranates, curled among vines and repeating like a quiet mantra beneath your steps. The house is hushed around you. There is no ticking clock here, no movement upstairs, just the warmth of stillness, of settled air, of rooms waiting in soft patience. You turn the corner and arrive at a door that is lighter than the others. White-painted wood, the paint worn smooth near the handle, where it has been opened 100, maybe 1,000 times. The brass knob is smaller, shaped like a flower bud, and when you open the door you are met not with the scent of coal dust or polish, but with something gentler. Tea leaves, sunlight, something vaguely floral, a trace of starch and linen. This is the morning room. The walls are covered in a pale green paper, not bold or fashionable, but soft and calming, a colour chosen not to impress guests but to comfort the household. The paper is adorned with a simple print of scattered clover and trefoil, small enough to seem almost like a texture. Above it, the cornice is painted cream, and the ceiling itself is a pale blue-grey, an old superstition borrowed from country houses where it was said to keep spiders away. The light here is different. You can see your own shadow now, soft and unthreatening, stretching faintly across the worn wooden floorboards that lie bare in places. The rug here smaller, patterned in faded pinks and fawns. This is a woman's room. You can tell in the arrangement, in the quiet precision of objects meant to be useful but also beautiful. There's a sewing table beneath the window, narrow, made of polished walnut with small side drawers, its surface inlaid with a rose motif. A basket sits beside it filled with thread cards, folded cloth, a pair of delicate scissors, and an unfinished length of embroidery showing tiny foxgloves and buttercups growing from the corner of a kerchief. Behind the table, the window is dressed with sheer muslin curtains, gathered and tied with ribbons of soft peach. Over them, a more substantial fabric in a dull rose colour is looped into simple swags, the fabric unlined and slightly faded, as though it has been here long enough to have softened in the sun. The light filters through gently, scattering across the low tufted chair set near the table. This chair is meant for reading, or resting, or watching the garden beyond the window. Though you can't see it now, you know it's there. The wallpaper ends at the chair rail, and below that the wall is painted a mellow cream, worn slightly where someone's heel might rest against it, when curled into that chair, day after day, year after year. On the small occasional table nearby, round, three-legged, a little unsteady, there rests a tea tray with 2 cups and saucers, each with tiny violets painted around the rims. The sugar bowl is lidless, its cube contents catching the afternoon light. Beside the tray, a folded copy of Godey's Lady's Book lies open to a page showing an engraving of a French interior, its walls lined with ornate moulding, its drapes elaborate and layered. The caption underneath describes how to copy the look with British materials, an aspiration, softened and made accessible. The fireplace is narrow here, trimmed in simple white-painted wood, with a small grate and a single log resting in it. Above the mantel hangs a small landscape painting, brushy and grey, perhaps a Scottish loch, though it's hard to tell. On the mantel itself 2 small glass vases, each with a single dried rose, one pink and one yellow. Between them, a framed daguerreotype of a woman, very young, wearing a dark bonnet and gazing into the middle distance with unsmiling eyes. A faint trace of silver ghosting at the edge of the image hints at age. This room doesn't entertain guests. It's for routine, for letter writing and quiet tasks. Beside the hearth, a sloped writing desk stands open, its surface lined with green baize and a small ivory-handled pen resting in its groove. A small bottle of ink sits beside it, and 3 letters are tucked under a paperweight shaped like a turtle, probably pewter. You notice how the design here is less concerned with status and more with intimacy. The furniture is lighter, less grand, and the colours are gentler. A simple framed verse hangs on the wall, stitched in thread, probably done by one of the daughters or even the matron herself. It reads, "Let no harsh word disturb this room. Here, work and peace shall ever bloom." You look upward and see that the gas fitting in this room is far simpler than those in the parlour or dining room. A single pendant with a shallow globe, its pull chain looped carefully and tucked through a porcelain guide near the ceiling. A subtle attempt at neatness, at order, even in small things. The ceiling rose is unadorned, just a smooth medallion painted the same as the ceiling itself. In this room, ornament retreats in favour of usefulness. but even that usefulness is wrapped in grace. You move toward the inner door, a small one near the writing desk, barely noticeable. It leads not to another grand space, but to the heart of domestic rhythm, the narrow passage behind the main staircase, from which one might access the kitchen, the scullery and the pantry beyond. The air by this door is cooler, more fragrant with yeast and flour, and you realise that someone has been baking recently. There's no sound of movement, no clatter, no voices, just the echo of routines lived long and well within these walls. You glance back at the morning room one more time and see it as a soft breath between the formal spaces that preceded it and the labouring ones that follow. It is a buffer, a haven, a room that serves as both sanctuary and station, depending on who enters. A place where time is allowed to slow, if only slightly, and where the objects are more likely to bear fingerprints than polish. The hallway behind you is growing dimmer now, the sun dipping lower beyond the lace-curtained windows. A long shadow stretches from the umbrella stand in the entranceway, and the house seems to take on a different rhythm, as if preparing for evening, for supper, for slippers and dimmed gaslight and the drawing of curtains. But you're not there yet. The kitchen waits now, and with it, the whole clockwork of domestic function hidden beneath the embroidery and mirrors of the front rooms. You step through the door, and the scent of flour and iron thickens in the air. You step down into the kitchen. The floor changes underfoot. No longer carpet or polished wood, but worn stone, uneven and cool, its surface smoothed by decades of foot traffic and spills. The walls are washed in pale lime, clean but scuffed, with patches of darker damp near the baseboards where the heat never fully reaches. The ceiling is low here, the beams exposed and blackened from the years. Hooks hang from them, iron, curved, utilitarian, and one still holds a bunch of drying herbs. Thyme, maybe, or marjoram, crisp and dusty with time. This room is warm, but not gently so. It is the heat of utility, of coal and iron and steam. A large black range dominates the far wall, built into the brick and surrounded by a deep hearth. Its surface is dotted with kettles and pans, a tall copper pot catching the dim light and reflecting it dully. The range is still warm. You can see the faint shimmer of heat above its top, smell the ghost of roasted onions, suet and black tea. To its left, a drying rail on a pulley hangs from the ceiling, a flannel petticoat draped across it, faintly steaming. Laundry shares this space with food and fire. There's no wallpaper here. The walls are part plastered, part tiled, and in places left bare, grey bricks stained by soot and years. Shelves line them, supported by iron brackets, each shelf crowded with heavy crockery, blue and white mixing bowls, glazed storage jars labelled in a tidy hand. Flour, tapioca, sugar, rice. Some labels are peeling, the ink faded by steam and time. A row of copper pans hangs on the wall, each one polished to a dull glow, but showing clear signs of use. Scratches, dents, worn spots where the tin lining has thinned. A wide wooden table sits at the centre of the room, its surface scarred with years of chopping, kneading and rolling. Its top is dusted with flour, and a cloth-draped bowl rests at one end, dough rising beneath the linen. A single candle stub stands in a brass holder at the far end of the table, wax cooled in mid-drip. Nearby, a butter churn, upright and stout, stands as a quiet relic of effort. The tools here are large and deliberate. Pestles, paddles, rolling pins, graters, trivets, ladles, cleavers, all with worn handles smoothed by strong hands. In the corner, a narrow window lets in a grey sliver of outside light, filtered through dust and soot. A shelf beneath it holds an enamel basin and a bar of yellow soap scored with use. Hanging above it, a checked dish towel, hand-sewn and carefully hemmed. The sink itself is stone, chipped at one corner with a cold tap that creaks when turned. There is no plumbing as you know it. Water is boiled in kettles. Waste is carried out by hand. Every process in this room has a step, a rhythm, a memory of someone else performing it just the same. The kitchen dresser stands against the opposite wall, broad and sturdy with open shelves above and cabinets below. It is painted a soft sage green, chipped in places to reveal older colours beneath, once cream, once brown. The shelves hold more crockery, cream jugs, willow-patterned plates, thick mugs with faded transfers of dogs and sailing ships. A row of teaspoons sits on a cloth. Someone has taken the time to polish them. On the cabinet doors below, brass knobs have been replaced here and there with mismatched wooden ones. Everything here has been repaired, not replaced. That's the rhythm of this house. Use, maintain, endure. You see the door that leads to the scullery, slightly ajar where the laundry tubs and washing mangle wait in shadows. It smells of damp linen and carbolic. From here, the back garden would be reached. A kitchen garden, maybe. Or a narrow flagstone yard with a coal bunker, a water butt and a washing line stretched taut between two hooks. But for now, you stay inside. There's a chair pulled up by the hearth. Low, armless, stuffed with horsehair, its covering worn down to threads. A shawl is draped over it carelessly. A pair of gloves lies folded on the table beside it, next to a copy of a cheap penny newspaper, creased and smudged with soot-blackened fingers. This is not a performative space. This is where the day lives, raw and full of repetition. It is where food is prepared, fires are tended, children are scrubbed, laundry is boiled, and the noise of the house is swallowed and softened by steam and labour. And yet, even here, there are choices of design. A small tin of dried lavender sits open on the shelf. A narrow curtain has been drawn halfway across the window, white muslin, embroidered with tiny forget-me-nots. The hearth is trimmed in red brick, each one scrubbed with salt and vinegar to keep it bright. Someone has placed a dried posy in a chipped jug on the mantel. Even among the coal dust and damp, beauty is not abandoned. It is stitched into the ordinary. You look up and notice a clock on the wall, a round-faced kitchen clock, its brass rim dulled with grease, its hands stopped at 2:30. Whether that's recent or long ago, you can't say, but the house doesn't seem to mind. Its sense of time is slower than yours, deeper. It moves in chores, in habits, in seasons. A narrow stair leads down beneath the main staircase, a servant's route, or perhaps a cellar. Beside it, a peg rail with a grey wool cloak and a bonnet still speckled with rain. Someone came in not long ago, someone who knows this room better than you ever will. But they are not here now, and the kitchen waits in its own warm hush, filled with things that never quite cool, never quite rest. You step back into the narrow passage, the warm scent of flour still clinging to your sleeves, and glance up the back stair. At the top lies a different world again, private, padded, quiet in a new way. The bedrooms wait there, the sitting rooms, the long shadows of upstairs life. But before you go there, there's one more room on the ground floor. It's smaller, quieter still, and through the half-open door you glimpse a wash of soft yellow and the edge of a writing desk, a study, or something like it, the place where books and solitude dwell. You follow the corridor toward it, the house continuing to open itself like a diary long unread. The study is smaller than the parlour, quieter than the dining room, and less softened than the morning room. It has a self-contained stillness, as if it prefers not to be entered at all, and yet you cross the threshold and feel not intrusion but invitation. The air here is dry and slightly stale, edged with the smell of old paper, ink, wood polish, and the faintest residue of tobacco long extinguished. The door clicks shut behind you with the sound of finality, and for a moment you are cocooned. The walls are lined with books, not floor to ceiling, but enough to suggest long accumulation rather than sudden wealth. Built-in shelves of dark-stained pine stretch from waist height to just above your head, each crammed with volumes in mismatched bindings. Some are calf leather, flaking at the spine, others are cloth, dyed dull green or navy, stamped in gold with titles barely legible in the low light. The top shelves are deeper in shadow, and you sense that some books there haven't been opened in decades. Between the stacks, the occasional photograph, postcard or pressed flower has been tucked, half forgotten. The shelves themselves bow slightly under the weight, as if holding knowledge too heavy to lift. The wallpaper is simple, perhaps the most modest you've seen so far, a repeating motif of stylized vines in grey-green on a cream ground, almost blurred at the edges from age and smoke. A darker dado panel runs around the base of the room, topped with a narrow shelf on which sit a few modest ornaments, a porcelain owl, a brass candlestick, a ceramic inkwell in the shape of a lion. Above that, hung with brass picture hooks, are several framed prints, engravings of Roman ruins, a watercolour of a village lane, and a small oil portrait of a man with mutton chops and a high collar, unsmiling, posed against a velvet curtain. The desk dominates the room's centre, A broad knee-hole piece of mahogany with deep drawers on either side and a green leather top mottled with ink blots and knife cuts. An open ledger rests on it, lines drawn neatly across the page in brown ink. A fountain pen with a silver nib lies across it, uncapped. You can see the blotter, the sand shaker, the glass paperweight shaped like a ship. The chair is a captain style, curved and padded at the seat, with cracked black leather. Its arms are worn, as if by the same hands again and again. Someone once sat here often, for long hours, writing letters, bills, notes, or perhaps entries never meant to be read by others. To the left of the desk, a narrow cupboard stands with its door slightly ajar, revealing stacks of yellowing correspondence tied in twine. Some have red wax seals, some mere folds, all dated carefully in the top corner. The room feels not quite abandoned, but paused, as if the owner has simply stepped out and will return as soon as the next appointment ends or the evening post arrives. A globe stands in one corner near the window, faded now, its oceans browned, its continents a mix of long-forgotten territories and imperial ambition. Nearby, a small occasional table holds a decanter of brandy, a square-cut glass, and a single volume of Plutarch's Lives, its pages thumbed, dog-eared, filled with pencil notes in the margins. This is a room of inward things, of thought, habit, retreat, and of control. Not in the oppressive sense, but in the way everything here has been chosen for use. The curtains at the window are heavier than those in the morning room, made of dark serge with a subtle stripe, tied back with plain twisted cord. On the windowsill rests a small potted fern, struggling toward the weak light. Its edges are browning. There's no lace curtain here, no embroidery. The masculine ideal of the mid-1800s, stoic, orderly, practical, is drawn out in space, in colour, in furniture. The carpet is dark, probably Axminster, patterned with deep navy, moss green, and maroon, worn smooth beneath the desk and door. The gaslight above is a single flame set in a frosted glass globe, suspended by a blackened brass fitting. The light is low but constant, with none of the flicker from earlier rooms. On a side wall, a fireplace, smaller than the others, holds a black iron grate. Cold now. The tiles are plain cream, edged in black. Above the mantel, a shelf holds several pocket-sized books, sermons, volumes of verse, and a thin blue book titled Conduct and Character in the English Gentleman, its spine cracked open at chapter 3. A framed carte de visite of a woman in lace stands near the edge, her smile barely perceptible, her dress elaborately belted. She might be a sister, a wife, a memory pressed in place. You notice the absence of certain things. There is no clock here, no flowers, no evidence of children, no softness for softness' sake. Even the few decorative touches carry weight. The globe, the bust, the heavy green curtain ties. Decoration here is function disguised, or else relic. No attempt is made to appeal to beauty alone, and yet the room is not cold. It hums with the faint afterglow of thought, of scribbling and reading and quiet decision. One of the lower drawers on the desk has been left open by a crack. You glance inside and see what looks like a small fabric swatch book. Samples of worsted and tweed for suits, perhaps, pinned in neatly labelled pages. Beneath it, an envelope addressed to a London tailor, dated 1868. Clothes, like rooms, were chosen with care. Fabric, texture, meaning layered into them. Even in a study, even in solitude, the Victorian home was curated to reflect character. A pipe sits in a wooden stand on the desk, unlit. A faint scent of its last use lingers. Sweet, earthy, faintly spiced, not overpowering. The scent of habit, of pause, of someone pacing the room in thought. You step back from the desk, passing your hand gently over the worn leather edge, and glance once more at the bookshelves. There is no order to them that you can see. History sits beside botany, theology beside Greek drama. You sense this is a room of personal logic, not decorative order. What made sense to its occupant remains locked in the shelves. Through the narrow doorway, the corridor has grown dim again. The light here never floods. It hovers. It lingers. You return to the hall and pause at the base of the staircase. The rail is polished, the carpet runner thin, tacked down with brass rods. its pattern barely visible in the dusk. Upstairs lies the private world, the bedrooms, the hidden softnesses, the layers of everyday sleep and waking. You place your hand on the balustrade and begin to climb. The stairs do not creak, but they feel old beneath your steps. The staircase curves gently, its rise shallow but deliberate, each step worn in the middle where feet have pressed for decades. Your hand trails along the banister, the wood warm and smooth beneath your fingers, polished by generations of ascent and descent. The walls narrow as you climb, the hallway becoming quieter, more enclosed, and the quality of light shifts. Gaslight does not reach here easily, and the sun has nearly disappeared. A small window halfway up casts a long, cool reflection across the wall, caught in the glass of a framed silhouette. A woman in profile, her bonnet modest, her gaze turned inward. At the top of the stairs, the corridor stretches in two directions, lined with closed doors and lit only by the glow spilling from a lamp at the far end. You turn left, your steps muffled now by a soft runner of pale blue and cream, its pattern faint with age but carefully maintained. The door you approach is wide, its panels heavier than those downstairs, the handle round and cold, and as you press it open the air changes again. This is the main bedroom. The room is large but not grand. It carries a softness that the public rooms do not, a kind of faded elegance layered in fabric, warmth, and repetition. The walls are papered in a dusty rose print, small, delicate roses twining with ivy across a cream background, a pattern fashionable in the 1860s and still common decades later. It's slightly yellowed in the corners, softened by years of lamplight and steam from the fire below. The ceiling is high and faintly mottled, with a plaster medallion surrounding a simple gas fixture. A single flame under a milky glass shade, its glow held close to the ceiling like a secret. The bed dominates the room, a wide four-poster made of dark-stained oak, its posts turned and fluted, rising to a canopy trimmed in gathered muslin and bordered with a fringe of small tassels. The bed is dressed in layers, crisp white linen sheets, a hand-quilted counterpane in faded burgundy, and a crocheted coverlet folded at the foot. Two bolsters sit upright against the headboard, flanked by smaller embroidered pillows stitched with initials in pale thread. The mattress beneath it all is deep and firm, stuffed with horsehair and turned regularly to keep its shape. A warming pan hangs nearby on the wall, its brass lid catching the firelight, a reminder of cold nights and careful rituals. To the left of the bed, a washstand of dark walnut holds a large ceramic basin and ewer, both painted with forget-me-nots. A small bottle of rosewater stands beside them, and a neatly folded towel rests on a low rail beneath. The mirror above it is spotted with age, its silvering faded around the edges, but it still holds your reflection in pieces. A soft bristle brush and comb rest in a wooden tray, and a small pot of cold cream, its label handwritten in a tidy feminine script, sits open. There is no running water here. Even bathing is a ceremony of patience. Across the room, a tall wardrobe stands sentinel, its mirrored door cracked faintly at the corner, its drawers deep and full of carefully folded garments. You can just make out the scent of lavender sachets and starch rising from the wood. A pair of buttoned boots sits beside it, laces neatly coiled. Hanging on a small wooden peg above them is a nightgown, stitched from fine lawn, edged in handmade lace. It is pale, almost translucent, and seems to belong to someone who understood how to care for fabric and what it meant to keep things lasting. A small fireplace sits at the far wall, its grate recently cleared but still smudged with ash. The mantel holds a porcelain clock, its hands stopped at 8, and two candlesticks shaped like classical columns. A family photograph is tucked behind the clock, its frame simple, the faces inside half faded by time. There is no grandeur here, only memory, privacy, ritual. The curtains are drawn halfway across the windows, thick velvet lined with ticking, edged with a pleated trim, and tied back loosely with braided cords. Behind them, a layer of lace filters the dim outside light, making the air inside glow with a pinkish softness. Beneath the window, a low seat is piled with cushions, some embroidered, some crocheted, each handmade and unique. There is a book resting there, left open and face down, The Heir of Redcliffe, its spine cracked and its pages marked by pressed ferns. You notice the colour scheme here is softer than in the rooms below, pale rose, ivory, faint gold, dusty green. These were considered feminine tones in the Victorian palette, used to calm, to soothe, to lend gentility to the private world of sleep and dressing. Even the carpet underfoot follows this rhythm, a tufted wool in faded rose and beige, showing wear along the path from the bed to the washstand. On the bedside table a small oil lamp rests, its glass chimney slightly blackened. There is a worn leather-bound prayer book, a folded handkerchief with a lace edge, and a tiny pressed flower held between a pair of blank pages. It's been there a long time, flattened almost to nothing. A rocking chair sits in the corner, gently worn, its caned seat sagging in the middle. Draped over the back is a shawl, grey wool with a chevron border, hand-fringed. A sewing basket rests at its feet, with a length of linen still looped through an embroidery hoop. Half of a lily is stitched there, unfinished. And here, more than anywhere else in the house so far, you feel the presence of time lived inward. This room does not perform. It shelters. It receives. Its decorations are not for visitors but for self and silence. A place to remove the corset, to unpin the hair, to fold away the public day. Every object here feels softened by fingers, warmed by breath. Even the gas lamp flickers more gently, as if unwilling to disturb. You glance once more toward the wardrobe, the curtains, the edge of the bed with its heavy posts and faded quilt, and realise this is the first room designed not to speak, but to listen. Not to show, but to hold. In the corridor beyond, the shadows are gathering more surely now. A chill rides the air along the floorboards, though somewhere, deeper in the house, a fire still murmurs. There is one more bedroom nearby, a smaller one, less adorned, perhaps belonging to a child or an aging relative. You turn the handle of the next door gently. The next room is waiting. The door opens inward without resistance. The latch clicks faintly behind you as you step into the smaller bedroom, and instantly the air feels different, thinner, cooler, edged with a kind of restraint. This room is narrower than the last and lower in the ceiling, with sloped walls that follow the pitch of the roof. It is lit only by a single gas sconce on the wall near the bed, its flame drawn small behind a shallow glass shade, the light puddling weakly at your feet. You pause on the threshold, letting your eyes adjust. Here, the walls are papered in a subdued pattern. Small quatrefoils in grey and cream, close set and repetitive. It feels modest, quiet, almost apologetic. The paper has been touched up in places with pale paste where small tears once ran, and in one corner a seam is slightly lifted. It is not grand. It does not wish to be. The air smells faintly of starch and lavender soap, and the window is shut tight against the night. The furnishings are few and the space between them wide. Every item in the room has a purpose and not one thing more. The bed is a narrow single, tucked against the wall beneath the window. Its frame is black iron, simple, curved, with little brass knobs at the top of each post. The mattress is thinner than the one downstairs, and the bedding is sparse but neatly made. A white cotton counterpane tucked with care, and a single feather pillow in a ticking stripe case. At the foot of the bed, a folded wool blanket in navy blue. There is no canopy, no fringe, no lace, and yet there's a piece here that settles into the walls like dust. Beside the bed is a small wooden table, unadorned, save for a kerosene lamp with a painted base, a cup and saucer resting on a doily, and a pair of spectacles folded carefully atop a worn cloth-bound book, its title unreadable in the dimness. A whitework handkerchief lies beneath them, embroidered only with a small letter A at the corner. The table's surface is scratched but not neglected, simply lived with. The window above the bed is dressed with muslin curtains, pale and plain, tied back with mismatched ribbon. There is no velvet here, no fringe, but the lace edge of the undercurtain has been hemmed by hand, and though yellowed with time, it still holds a pattern of tiny roses. Through the glass, the rooftops of neighbouring houses sink into dusk, chimney pots outlined against a lavender sky, the faint glow of other windows flickering to life across the narrow street. A single chair stands near the wall, a rush-seated ladderback, its legs scuffed. A neatly folded shawl is draped over the top rail, grey wool with a simple woven border. Beside it, a washstand smaller than the one in the main bedroom, painted white, with a chipped enamel basin and a bar of yellow soap resting in a cracked dish. A towel, coarse and clean, is hung over the side. There is no mirror here, only a small frame nailed above the stand containing a verse, its edges foxed. Let thy heart be still, thy hands be clean. In the far corner, a narrow chest of drawers holds its shape against the sloped ceiling. Its handles are brass but dulled with use, and the wood has lost its polish. A modest ceramic jug sits on top, next to a comb and a small tin of beeswax for smoothing stray hairs. A pair of worn leather gloves rest beside them, fingers curled inward, as if recently removed. The room seems to remember their owner more vividly than the grander chambers down the hall. Above the chest, a framed photograph hangs by a length of twine. An older woman in dark dress and cap seated beside a small table, with her hands folded over a closed Bible. The frame is plain pine, the photograph slightly crooked behind its glass. And yet, it dominates the wall not by scale, but by presence. It makes the room feel watched over, tended in absence. On the floor, a rag rug lies at the bedside, stitched from strips of old cloth in soft earth tones, faded by years of washing. Each strip once belonged to another garment, another cushion, another curtain perhaps. It is decoration in the form of memory, not ornament. Nothing here has been added for appearance alone. Each object has work to do. Each stitch has history. You glance back at the bed, narrow and waiting, and wonder who has slept here over the years. A maiden aunt, a governess, a child who grew up too fast, a guest too proud to ask for more. The Victorian home was built on layers of presence and absence. The small room was never just an afterthought. It was the quiet holding place for the overlooked, the aging, the solitary. The room does not apologise for its sparseness. It wears it like a badge. In its quiet utility, it whispers truths too delicate for parlours and drawing rooms. That beauty is sometimes born of necessity. That comfort, in some corners, is a straight chair, a clean towel, a warm quilt, and a window that shuts out the cold. As you turn to leave, you notice one final detail. A small box beneath the bed, half pulled from its place. A wooden lid, painted with forget-me-not, slides open to reveal a folded letter, a pressed ribbon, and a handkerchief embroidered not with an initial, but a name. Everything in this room holds meaning, quietly, without display. You close the door softly behind you, and the corridor wraps around you once more. There is one more bedroom at the end of the hall, a child's room, with softer light, smaller things, and the distant echo of laughter now long gone. You walk toward it slowly, your feet brushing over the worn rug as the house draws you forward. The door at the end of the hall is lighter than the others, narrower too, with its paint slightly chipped along the frame where countless small knocks and scrapes have worn it down. The handle sits lower, placed for a child's reach, and as you press it gently open, the room greets you not with grandeur nor stillness, but with a hush filled with memory. The air smells faintly of beeswax polish, wood shavings, old linen, and a distant trace of violet water. The light in here is soft, filtered through gauzy curtains the colour of milk fluttering faintly in the draught from the eaves. The nursery is small, square, and held together by layers of time. The wallpaper is charmingly faded, a repeating pattern of ducks, willow branches and paper boats rendered in pale blue and taupe, once crisp but now gently ghosted by sunlight. Along the skirting boards, a strip of darker wood marks the border where toys have bumped, where chairs have scraped, where a world of small movements has shaped the room into something deeply lived in. The floor is wooden, bare save for a worn braided rug in the centre, a soft spiral of cloth strips in calico and gingham, padded underfoot, hand-stitched by someone with time and care. It rests beside a child-sized rocking chair, painted white and chipped at the arms, its back slatted and curved just enough to cradle a small back. Draped across its arm is a knitted shawl, ivory wool, with one corner unravelling slightly. It looks untouched in years. On the far side of the room, beneath a slanted dormer window, stands a toy chest, low, wide, and painted with faded pastoral scenes. Sheep in a meadow, a girl with a hoop, a boy flying a kite. Its lid is ajar, and inside you glimpse a soft cloth doll, one arm twisted awkwardly, a wooden horse, its paint cracked at the saddle, a tin rattle dulled with tarnish, a stack of picture books with brittle pages, edges curled, each item silent now, but not entirely still. The air around them seems to hold a breath that never quite exhaled. Against one wall stands a low bed, a child's bed, narrower even than the small bedrooms, framed in pale birch with a soft arc at the headboard. It is dressed in simple linen sheets and a patchwork quilt made from worn fabric scraps, checks, stripes, florals, all pieced together with careful stitches. The quilt's border is fraying, but the colours still pulse quietly in the dim light. A small stuffed bear rests at the pillow, its velvet nap worn bare in places, one black button eye replaced by a mismatched one. Above the bed hangs a sampler in an oak frame, stitched with red and navy thread. God Bless Our Home, 1872. Below the phrase, a row of uneven letters and numbers, clearly the hand of a child. Beneath the sampler is a set of hooks, each carved with tiny painted flowers. A pinafore hangs from one, a velvet bonnet from another. The fabric smells faintly of time itself, of starch, dust, and rosewood drawers long closed. In the corner, a miniature washstand matches the others in purpose, if not in style. This one is painted white, with little pink roses around the basin's rim. A child-sized pitcher sits beside it, and a sponge brittle with age. On a shelf above it, a framed lithograph depicts a lamb surrounded by lilies, and beside it, a pair of well-worn leather shoes, barely the length of your hand, rest side by side as if waiting to be tied. The nursery's window seat is padded with a single cushion, hand-stitched with clouds and stars. On its surface lies an open book, Struwelpeter, its illustrations exaggerated and strange, both whimsical and slightly grim. It speaks to the ear as approach to childhood, gentle, yet tinged with order and consequence. You notice the spine is splitting. It has been read many times. Along the wall, shelves hold an assortment of objects. A wooden Noah's Ark, with tiny animals faded and round, a porcelain-faced doll dressed in muslin, a set of alphabet blocks, one of them cracked. There is a tin box marked Puzzles, and beside it, a slate with a cloth tied to one end for erasing. You can imagine a child sitting there, bare feet curled beneath them, tongue poking from the corner of their mouth in quiet concentration. Everything here is small but deeply considered. In the Victorian home, the nursery was both sanctuary and schoolroom, a place for play, yes, but also for moulding character, for learning order and respect, for whispering the beginnings of who one must become. The furnishings reflect this, solid but unornamented, pretty but not delicate, practical above all, yet no less filled with feeling than the most lavish drawing room. There is a rocking horse near the door, life-sized, its mane real horsehair, its leather bridle cracked. The stand creaks faintly when touched, and for a moment you can almost hear the echo of a child's laughter rising and fading. Behind the horse, a low cupboard holds folded linens, a jar of buttons, and an old biscuit tin that, once opened, reveals marbles, jacks, and a neatly folded note in childish script. For Mama. This is not a room frozen in a moment of perfection. It is a room that lived, exhaled, moved forward. It was painted and patched, tidied and wept in. Decorated not for display but for childhood itself, a kind that was seen as both sacred and serious, to be protected and prepared all at once. Every object here carries the weight of use, of repetition, of small, serious hands placing them with care. As you move to the doorway, you glance back, one last time. The bed with its softened quilt, the light tracing the edge of the window, the open toy chest, the quiet chair. Nothing moves, and yet the stillness feels full, like an old lullaby remembered without sound. Beyond the nursery, the hallway loops back toward the staircase, but before descending there is one more room tucked near the attic, less personal, more peculiar. A space once used for storage, for sewing, perhaps for a servant. The kind of room the house no longer acknowledges, but which still waits behind a narrow door. You move toward it slowly, your hand brushing the wall as the hallway narrows. The staircase creaks beneath your feet, a slow, deliberate sound that echoes faintly into the narrow space above. You climb carefully, your hand trailing along the wooden banister, fingers brushing dust in the grooves worn by other hands long before yours. The air changes with each step, cooler, thinner. touched by old wood and forgotten linens. There is no gaslight here, only the glow of a small window somewhere above, clouded with dust, and a weak draught that carries the scent of old paper and stored cloth. At the top of the stairs, the attic room waits behind a short, uneven door with a hook-and-eye latch that doesn't quite close properly. The paint on the door is pale, once a crisp cream perhaps, now yellowed with time and marked with faint water stains near the bottom where damp once crept up from the floorboards. You open it slowly, the hinges complain softly, and the room reveals itself not all at once but in layers. It is a low room with a sharply slanted ceiling, following the pitch of the roof so closely that the walls seem to fold inward. Dust dances in the angled sunlight from a small dormer window, its glass warped with age, the panes crossed with fine cracks like spiderwebs. A wasp nest sits abandoned in one corner of the eaves, grey and silent. The room is filled with a sense of paused utility, things left in place but no longer needed, like thoughts once essential, now replaced. There is furniture here, but not arranged for comfort. A small wooden cot with no bedding leans against the far wall, its frame splintered slightly at one joint. A battered chair with one uneven leg rests beside a trunk with a broken clasp. The trunk is covered in scuffs and initials stamped in flaking gilt. CLR 1848. Its surface is dulled by years of fingernails, boot scuffs, and the brush of skirts. Inside, if you opened it, you might find moth-eaten garments, old ledgers, cracked candles, or the curled remnants of wall stencils never applied. A table stands beneath the window, covered with a folded length of muslin, a wooden darning egg, and a pincushion shaped like a tomato. A pair of scissors lies open beside a tin box marked Mother's Needles, and several reels of thread, black, navy, cream, are scattered like fallen dominoes. There are scraps of fabric in a wicker basket, some already hemmed into strips, others stained or fraying. The presence of a half-finished project suggests someone once came here daily, hands busy while the rest of the house hummed with sound far below. The walls are bare lath and plaster, cracking in places where damp seeped in from the roof. No paper here, no frieze. But above the desk someone has tacked a single postcard, faded, depicting a seaside scene. 2 children holding hats against the wind, a dog leaping at the tide. On the back the words, "You must come soon, it is brisk but fine." The stamp is from 1886. In one corner stands a tall cupboard, its paint chipped and uneven. Inside, shelves sag beneath the weight of folded linens, bolts of rough wool, and a box labelled Ribbons, 1879. There's a smell of lavender sachet and camphor. You imagine a woman here, carefully pressing folds, stitching hems, preparing for someone else's comfort in a room never meant for her own. A narrow cot sits against the opposite wall. It was once used for a seamstress, or a maid, perhaps a governess who needed space but no presence. The mattress is thin, the pillow lumpy, the blanket a dull olive green. There is no decoration on the walls, just a nail where a crucifix may once have hung, and beside it, faint scuff marks where a small chest used to sit. On the floor beneath the cot, a tin chamber pot, empty but rusting slightly at the rim. The world of this room was functional, nearly invisible, but not unloved. The flooring is raw wood, cold and warped, dust gathering in the corners and between the boards. Mouse droppings in one edge remind you that nature creeps in where heat and presence have long withdrawn. The single rug in the room, a coarse mat in brown and ochre, was likely made of jute or sacking material. It doesn't soften the space much, but it serves to remind you that someone once knelt here often, perhaps at the cot, or the trunk, or at prayer. This attic room was not meant to impress, but it holds history more deeply than the parlour. In these beams and shadows lived the hidden labour of the Victorian household, the stitching of drapes that hung 3 floors below, the mending of stockings never thanked for, the folding of towels used in grander rooms. It was the beating heart behind the curated calm. The decoration here lies in traces, worn wood, forgotten tools, and the careful organisation of a cupboard that no guest would ever see. And yet, there's something delicate here. A humanity in the unfinished hem, the faint scent of beeswax polish, the tiny embroidered initials inside a discarded collar. MS. These are not remnants. They are residue, of usefulness, of presence, of someone who lived where others only passed. You move slowly back toward the door, and as you do, you notice a small basket on the floor near the window. Inside it, a child's toy, a carved bird, its paint worn away to the bare wood. It rests on a frayed square of muslin, and beside it, a spool of red thread. You close the door behind you. The latch clicks once, then shifts back open half an inch. It never did quite close. Some things are like that, unfinished, but not forgotten. The staircase leads down again, back toward warmth, polish, and light. You follow it in silence. There is one more room to see before you leave the upper floors. A study, a room of order and reflection, of books, dark wood, and the private logic of a man's mind. It waits for you just beyond the landing. The landing creaks softly beneath your footsteps, a faint echo that lingers as you reach the study door. It is heavier than others, its surface polished dark mahogany with a brass knob worn smooth by fingers long gone. You turn it slowly, feeling the slight resistance of the latch, and the door opens inward to reveal a room unlike any you've seen so far. The study is modest in size but dense with presence. The walls are panelled with deep walnut carved with subtle detail, fluted pilasters and narrow raised rectangles framing a space both intimate and formal. The wood's grain catches the light from a gas lamp mounted on the wall, soft and flickering, casting shadows that pool into corners and dance quietly on the floorboards. The ceiling here is low, bordered with delicate plaster cornices that rise like a crown moulding, intricate yet restrained. The air smells faintly of leather-bound books, tobacco smoke and beeswax polish, mingling with the distant scent of ink and paper. There is a weight here, an order imposed on the quiet chaos of thoughts, papers, and private study. Against one wall stands a tall bookcase, shelves filled with volumes of varying sizes, some bound in cracked leather, others in faded cloth. Titles in gold leaf gleam faintly. The complete works of Shakespeare, the principles of natural philosophy, poems of Tennyson. Each book bears the signs of frequent handling, creased spines, frayed edges, the occasional penciled note in margins yellowed with age. A large writing desk dominates the centre of the room. Its surface is worn but cared for, scattered with neat stacks of paper, a quill in a glass ink pot, a brass letter opener, and a small brass clock that ticks quietly. A green-shaded banker's lamp throws a soft circle of light over an open ledger, its pages ruled in precise lines, entries written in fine script. Behind the desk, a high-backed leather chair sits angled slightly away from the room, its arms worn smooth. Nearby, a pair of spectacles rest folded on a blotter, beside a sealed envelope stamped with an elaborate wax seal. You imagine the man who occupies this space, perhaps the master of the house, or a scholar, a thinker, a man who escapes the noise of the world for the sanctuary of ink and wood. The floor is covered by a large Persian rug, its reds and blues muted by years of careful footsteps. The patterns are intricate, flowers, vines, and geometric shapes weaving a quiet complexity beneath your feet. Near the desk, a footstool rests patiently, its upholstery threadbare in places but still dignified. On one side of the room, a small fireplace is set beneath a heavy mantel carved with acanthus leaves. A gentle fire burns low, embers glowing softly, casting a warm radiance that mingles with the gaslight. Above the mantel hangs a framed engraving of a hunting scene, horses and hounds caught mid-chase in frozen motion. The frame is simple, oak-stained dark, but the scene feels alive in the flickering light. Near the window, heavy curtains in dark green velvet are drawn back, tied with tasselled cords that scrape softly against the wall. The window glass is thick, wavy with age, and beyond it, you can glimpse the silhouettes of bare branches against the fading evening sky. A small brass telescope stands on a tripod by the window, aimed toward the stars, an emblem of curiosity and quiet wonder. On a nearby shelf, a globe rests on a carved stand, its surface worn smooth, where a hand has traced the lines of continents and seas countless times. There are no photographs here, no family portraits, only books and objects of study, an environment created for thought, reflection, and solitude. Yet, despite its masculine austerity, the room holds a certain warmth, an intimacy born from routine and care. You sit briefly in the chair, feeling the leather cradle you, the quiet ticking of the clock grounding you in the moment. The study is a retreat from the world's bustle, a place where ideas take shape, where plans are made, and where time flows measured and slow. After a moment, you rise and turn toward the door, feeling the weight of the room settle behind you. As you step back into the hall, the soft gaslight flickers, and you realise there is still more to explore. Other rooms filled with stories, secrets, and the gentle accumulation of everyday life in a Victorian home. Stepping down from the upper floors, you find yourself drawn toward the dining room, a place designed to hold the rhythms of daily life and the occasional formal occasion. The door opens smoothly on well-oiled hinges, revealing a room bathed in warm afternoon light that filters softly through heavy curtains drawn partially aside. The air here smells faintly of polished wood, simmering spices, and the faintest trace of candle wax, an invitation to pause and gather. The walls are painted a muted olive green, chosen both for its soothing quality and its ability to frame the darker wood furniture with quiet elegance. Crown moulding runs along the ceiling's edge, crisp and simple, while a patterned frieze, an intertwining vine of leaves and blossoms, wraps the upper walls in a delicate hand-painted border, worn in places where the years have softened the brushstrokes. Dominating the room is the dining table itself, long, rectangular, and made of rich mahogany polished to a deep gleam. The surface reflects the room's golden light like still water. Around it, heavy carved chairs stand in orderly ranks, their high backs adorned with the family crest, worked into the dark wood with careful precision. Each chair is cushioned with burgundy velvet, the fabric plush yet faded at the edges, where hands have rested and elbows leaned. The table is set not for a meal, but in quiet readiness. A pristine white linen cloth drapes over its length, its fine weave a testament to skilled craftsmanship. Centred atop it is a silver candelabrum, its arms gracefully curving upward, holding half-melted candles whose soft pools of wax tell of evenings long past. Around it, a few porcelain dishes rest quietly, delicate floral patterns picked out in cobalt and gold. Against one wall, a sideboard stands stocked with polished servingware, silver trays, crystal decanters, and china plates carefully stacked beneath a glass-fronted cabinet. The china's delicate patterns tell stories of faraway factories, Spode, Coalport, and Wedgwood, evidence of Victorian England's expanding reach and taste for refinement. Some pieces bear gilded edges, others intricate hand-painted roses, each carefully chosen and treasured. Above the sideboard hangs a large mirror framed in dark wood with gilded accents, the glass ever so slightly tarnished by age. It reflects the room's soft light, doubling the sense of space and warmth. Nearby, a gilt-framed oil painting depicts a pastoral scene. Rolling hills beneath a fading sun, a shepherd tending his flock. The painting's colours are muted now, but still convey a sense of calm and permanence. The floor beneath your feet is oak, laid in narrow planks, its surface polished but worn in the places where the family's footsteps gather most often. A large rug covers the central area beneath the table and chairs, deep reds and golds in Persian patterns, threads worn thin but still vibrant, softening the wooden floor and muffling footsteps. A chandelier hangs from the ceiling, a wrought-iron structure with 12 arms, each holding a gaslit globe. The globes cast a soft, warm glow, designed to mimic the flicker of candlelight but with a steadier flame, reflecting the Victorian fascination with technological progress balanced against tradition. On the mantelpiece over the small unused fireplace sit small decorative objects, a pair of porcelain figurines, one a ballerina mid-pose, the other a young woman reading, alongside a clock encased in carved oak, its face elegantly simple but perfectly kept. A few sprigs of dried lavender in a slender glass vase fill the air with a faint, soothing scent. In this room, every detail is a balance of function and beauty, formality and intimacy. The dining room is not only a place to eat, but a stage for connection, conversation, and ceremony. It reflects a household that values order, tradition, and comfort, wrapped in the elegant trappings of Victorian design. As you step away from the table, your hand brushes the smooth wood of a chair back, and you feel the gentle weight of countless family dinners, whispered confidences, and quiet moments shared here across the years. From this room, a door leads to the kitchen below, a world of warmth, labour, and the steady hum of domestic life. But before you descend, you notice the faint smell of fresh bread lingering faintly in the air, and you take a moment to imagine the unseen hands and hearts that make this house a home. Descending a narrow staircase with worn wooden steps, you feel the temperature subtly shift. The air grows warmer, tinged with the comforting sense of smoke, herbs, and simmering stew. The kitchen is a world apart from the quiet formality upstairs, filled with the rhythms of daily labour and the practical beauty of Victorian household industry. The room is large but utilitarian, with walls covered in whitewashed plaster, cracked and faintly stained in places from years of cooking fires and steam. Thick oak beams stretch overhead, blackened slightly by soot and age, grounding the room with their sturdy presence. The floor is flagstone, cold beneath your feet, worn smooth in places where heavy footfalls tread regularly. Against one wall stands the hearth. A vast black cast-iron stove dominates the space, its surface gleaming where polish meets heat. The fire burns steadily inside, casting flickering shadows that dance across the pots and kettles hung on hooks nearby. Copper pans shimmer softly, their rounded shapes reflecting the warm glow. A spit turns slowly, threaded with a joint of meat, releasing a faint aroma that speaks of slow roasting. Near the stove, a large wooden table sits central in the room, its surface scarred with knife marks and patches of flour dust. Bowls of fresh vegetables, carrots, potatoes, turnips, rest beside a wooden mortar and pestle. A ceramic jug holds cold water, while a basket of eggs sits nearby, still speckled with straw. Shelves along the walls are crowded with jars and tins, each labelled with handwritten script, dried herbs, preserved fruits, and spices brought back from far corners of the empire. Lavender sachets hang near the doorway to keep moths away, their scent mingling with the earthier smells of onions and garlic. The sink is a simple stone basin, worn smooth by years of use, with a wooden draining board beside it. Cloths hang from hooks, sturdy linen tea towels embroidered with delicate patterns of roses and ivy, hints of care amid the toil. On one side, a small window looks out onto the back garden, its panes fogged and streaked. Sunlight filters through the grime, casting a dappled pattern on the wall. You imagine the garden beyond, a patchwork of herbs, vegetables and flowering plants that supply the kitchen with fresh ingredients and a touch of colour. A wooden dresser stands against the far wall, stocked with earthenware crockery, plain but sturdy plates, bowls and jugs. The drawers are filled with hand-forged cutlery, worn handles smoothed by years of grasping hands. The kitchen smells of hearth smoke, fresh bread, and the faint sweetness of apples. It is the workroom of the home, where meals are prepared with care, where domestic life unfolds in quiet routines. The room hums softly with the sounds of simmering stew, the scrape of knives against wood, and the distant tick of a clock. In a corner, a spinning wheel rests unused, its polished wood catching the light, a reminder of other household tasks that once filled the day. Nearby, a basket of freshly laundered linen sits ready to be folded and returned upstairs. You pause at the stove, imagining the women who stood here, mothers, maids, cooks, whose skilled hands transformed raw ingredients into sustenance. Their work was invisible to most, yet essential to every other part of the house. From the kitchen, a back door leads out to the yard, a space of stone and dirt where chores continue. But before you step outside, you notice a small stool tucked under the table, worn smooth where someone once sat to peel vegetables or mend a sock. It is a quiet reminder that even in the busiest rooms, moments of stillness can be found. The back door swings open with a soft creak, and a cool breeze brushes past you, carrying the scents of earth, grass, and blossoming flowers. Stepping onto the stone-paved yard, you find yourself surrounded by a patchwork of greenery, a small refuge where nature quietly presses against the edges of the home. The garden is modest but carefully tended, a private world separated from the bustle of the street by a high brick wall, its surface mottled with creeping ivy that twists upward like green fingers. The bricks are uneven and softened by moss, evidence of many years standing watch. Beyond the wall, you catch glimpses of neighbouring chimneys and rooftops, smoke curling lazily against the sky. Beneath your feet, a narrow path winds between beds of plants, bordered by low box hedges clipped into neat shapes, their dark leaves glossy and dense. The path is made of compacted earth, worn smooth by many steps, soft underfoot despite the occasional loose pebble. On either side, flower beds burst with colour and texture. Delicate roses climb slender trellises, their petals pale pink and creamy white, faintly fragrant in the late afternoon air. Lavender plants hum softly with the busy work of bees, their purple spikes nodding gently in the breeze. Snapdragons and hollyhocks stand tall, their blossoms like bursts of quiet laughter amid the green. Near the back fence, a small herb garden thrives in neatly arranged rows. Rosemary, thyme and sage fill the air with their pungent, calming aromas. A wooden sign, handwritten in faded ink, labels each plant, a touch of order in the wildness. You imagine the kitchen windowsill crowded with freshly clipped herbs, the gardener's hands careful as they gather sprigs to add to stew or tea. A wooden bench sits beneath a blossoming cherry tree, its branches heavy with white flowers that flutter like soft snow when stirred by the wind. The bench's paint is peeling, worn by sun and rain, but the wood beneath is smooth and welcoming. You sit for a moment, feeling the rough texture beneath your fingers, listening to the faint chirping of birds and the rustle of leaves. The garden is a sanctuary, part work, part pleasure. It provides food, medicine, and beauty, a link between the natural world and the carefully ordered interior of the house. It is a place where time slows, where the small cycles of growth and decay mark the passing days. Along one side, a small shed leans slightly, its door hanging open to reveal tools, rakes, spades, and a watering can, all worn but well cared for. Nearby, a wheelbarrow stands ready, its metal faded and wooden handles smooth from use. You sense the presence of hands that tend this garden daily, hands that know each plant's needs, each season's demands. As the sun dips lower, casting long shadows across the earth, the garden seems to hold its breath. The flowers close their petals, and the bees quiet their hum. The air cools, carrying the promise of evening, of quiet rooms waiting inside. You rise from the bench and turn back toward the kitchen door. The cycle between house and garden, between work and rest, is continuous and gentle, woven into the very fabric of Victorian life. You step back through the kitchen and into the hallway, then climb a narrow staircase that creaks softly beneath your feet, leading you to a room painted in pale pastel hues, a sanctuary designed for the youngest members of the household. The nursery is a place of gentle light and calm, where care and protection mingle with the subtle decoration of a Victorian childhood. The walls are painted a soft cream, their smooth plaster interrupted only by delicate stenciled borders near the ceiling, interlocking garlands of ivy and roses, their colours faded but still sweetly inviting. The window is framed by lightweight curtains of muslin, embroidered with tiny blossoms, fluttering slightly with the breeze that drifts through the open sash. Sunlight spills softly onto a large woven rug, its patterns simple and comforting, muted reds, greens and blues, forming diamond shapes and tiny stars. The floorboards beneath are polished but hidden beneath layers of warmth and texture. Against one wall, a wooden cradle rocks gently, suspended on carved rockers. Its spindled sides are painted a soft white, chipped slightly in places where tiny hands have reached out and grasped. Inside, a patchwork quilt covers a bundle of soft linen and lace, each square a different fabric, floral calico, soft ticking stripes and faded damask, all stitched with care, a work of love and time. A small wooden rocking horse stands nearby, its paint worn but proud, the mane and tail made of soft horsehair that brushes lightly when the horse is moved. On a low shelf, a collection of toys, wooden blocks, painted tin soldiers, and a rag doll with button eyes and a faded dress sit patiently, waiting for a child's hand. A chest of drawers holds tiny clothes, lace-trimmed shirts, hand-knitted stockings and soft bonnets, each piece folded carefully. The dresser's surface is adorned with a small porcelain vase holding fresh wildflowers, a gift perhaps from a mother's hand, delicate and fragrant. Above the dresser, framed prints of nursery rhymes and fairy tales hang in neat rows, Little Bo Peep, Jack and Jill, and the Owl and the Pussycat. Their verses familiar and comforting, passed down through generations. The frames are simple wood, painted white, matching the cradle and softening the room's edges. A small washstand stands near the door with a basin of cool water and a folded towel embroidered with the child's initials. The silver pitcher gleams faintly, its surface catching the soft daylight, a quiet reminder of daily care and routine. The nursery feels like a cocoon, soft, secure, and full of quiet joy. It is a room where life begins, where hopes are held gently, and where the careful touches of decoration speak of tenderness and protection. The pastel colours, the hand-stitched quilts, the careful placement of toys, they all tell a story of childhood preserved in time. As you look around, you notice the faint scent of lavender and beeswax, the faintest echo of lullabies sung long ago, and you sense the delicate rhythms of days filled with play, naps, and quiet afternoons. From here, a door leads to the adjoining nursery maid's room, simple and neat, a reminder that even the youngest in the household are surrounded by care and order. Passing through a narrow door beside the nursery, you enter a small chamber set aside for the nursery maid, a young woman whose work shapes the rhythms of childhood, but often remains unseen. The room is modest, functional, and imbued with the quiet dignity of service, a place where simplicity meets purpose. The walls are painted a pale grey-blue, calming and cool, with a single framed print of a countryside scene hanging slightly askew, a reminder of home beyond these walls. The floorboards creak softly underfoot, scuffed but well cared for, with a simple woven rug in muted browns and creams providing warmth. A narrow iron bed stands against one wall, dressed with plain white linens neatly tucked and starched, a single cotton pillow resting at the head. The blanket is a patchwork of darker cloth, worn but clean, folded carefully at the foot. Near the bed, a small wooden washstand holds a chipped porcelain basin and jug, evidence of the simple rituals of cleanliness that mark the day. A wooden chair with a spindle back sits beside a tiny writing desk, cluttered with a few personal items, a well-worn prayer book, a small notebook filled with neat handwriting, and a tin of homemade balm scented faintly with rosemary. These humble possessions speak quietly of hopes and memories, of letters written and dreams held close. On the dresser, a few folded garments lie ready, a starched apron, a plain cotton dress, and a shawl knitted from coarse wool. A pair of sturdy boots rest beneath, scuffed but serviceable, prepared for long days spent moving through the household. The window looks out onto the garden, framed by simple linen curtains that flutter softly with the breeze. From here, you can see the paths where the nursery maid often walks to fetch herbs, tend the children's clothes, or simply take a brief moment of quiet in the midst of busy days. Though modest, the room feels like a sanctuary for one who serves, a space where small comforts and moments of solitude exist amid the duties. It is a reminder that behind the polished wood and fine fabrics of the main house, there is a web of lives woven tightly together, each thread essential to the whole. The nursery maid's room is a quiet contrast to the nursery's softness, practical but not without care, a space that reflects the Victorian ideal of discipline balanced with compassion. As you step back into the hallway, you carry with you a sense of the many unseen hands that shape the home's life, hands that clean, mend, soothe, and serve, creating the invisible framework on which the family's comfort depends. You step down the hallway to a heavy wooden door, its surface carved with subtle floral motifs that hint at the room beyond. Pushing it open, you enter the master bedroom, a space designed for repose and privacy, where comfort is layered with careful decoration to soothe both body and mind. The walls are painted in a soft, muted shade of dusty rose, a colour chosen for its warmth and subtle femininity, and they are adorned with framed prints of pastoral scenes, rolling hills, gentle rivers, and quiet cottages, images meant to inspire peace and nostalgia. A delicate wallpaper border featuring tiny violets runs just below the ceiling, its intricate pattern adding a touch of refined charm without overwhelming the room. The floor is covered with a thick woolen carpet in deep burgundy, muffling footsteps and lending a sense of warmth beneath your feet. Near the centre stands the grand four-poster bed, its frame carved from dark mahogany, rising to tall posts draped with soft sheer curtains of ivory muslin. The bed is layered with quilts and blankets, heavy damask beneath, topped by hand-stitched patchworks in muted earth tones, worn smooth where the hands of its owners have rested. Pillows of various sizes and textures are arranged neatly, their embroidered cases whispering of the care taken in the household's linens. On one bedside table rests a delicate porcelain vase holding freshly picked wildflowers, daisies and lavender that add a gentle fragrance to the air. Across the room, a large dresser with an oval mirror carved in the same dark wood stands polished to a soft sheen. Small boxes of jewellery and perfume bottles with cut glass stoppers sit atop it, catching the light with quiet sparkle. A lace handkerchief peeks out from beneath a wooden brush, its bristles smooth from years of use. A cosy armchair is positioned by the window, upholstered in faded velvet with floral patterns that echo the room's colour scheme. A thick fringed shawl is draped over the back, ready to be pulled close on chill evenings. The window itself is tall and narrow, framed with heavy drapes in deep burgundy velvet tied back to let the soft daylight spill inside. Near the door, a small writing desk holds an assortment of papers, an inkstand and a quill pen. Here, letters were written and received, and perhaps private thoughts recorded in a journal. The desk's surface bears the faintest traces of wax seals and pressed flowers, reminders of correspondence and connection beyond the walls of the house. Soft light filters through the window, casting long, gentle shadows that shift slowly as the afternoon deepens. The room breathes quiet dignity and comfort, a place where worries can be laid aside and the body can find rest. As you pause in the centre of the room, the subtle scent of lavender and cedarwood lingers, mingling with the faint trace of perfume, and you feel the layers of history and care wrapped around this space, an intimate haven created with patience and love. A narrow door beside the bed opens into the dressing room, a smaller but richly appointed space where the art of getting ready unfolds with care and precision. The walls here are painted a soft cream, their surface broken only by a large ornate mirror framed in carved wood gilded faintly with gold leaf. The mirror reflects the room's details, a delicate collection of brushes, combs and small bottles resting on a polished wooden dressing table. The air smells faintly of lavender and rosewater, a gentle perfume that mingles with the warm scent of polished wood and soft fabrics. The floor is covered with a thick plush rug in pale mauve, muffling footsteps and adding a layer of softness beneath your feet. Dresses hang neatly from a wooden wardrobe and a carved clothes rack, silk gowns in muted pastels, deep velvet coats trimmed with fur, and crisp white linens embroidered with intricate lace. Each garment is carefully stored and maintained, a testament to the importance of appearance and propriety in Victorian society. On the dressing table, a delicate porcelain bowl holds a bar of scented soap, while a crystal decanter glistens nearby, filled with clear water for washing. A silver hand mirror rests beside a collection of hairpins and combs made from tortoiseshell, arranged with quiet order. A small stool, cushioned with a faded velvet pad, invites you to sit and imagine the ritual of dressing, a slow, deliberate process involving layers of petticoats, corsets and fine stockings, each piece a part of the carefully crafted appearance demanded by the era. The room's single window is draped with sheer curtains that filter the light into a soft glow, making the delicate embroidery on the fabric shimmer faintly. Outside, you catch a glimpse of the garden's greenery, a reminder of the world beyond this intimate space. Framed sketches of fashion plates hang on the walls, showing the latest styles from London's boutiques and fashion magazines, evidence of the household's connection to wider cultural trends. These images serve as inspiration and aspiration, tying the private world of the dressing room to the bustling streets and salons beyond. The dressing room is a place of transformation, a pause between the private rest of the bedroom and the public presentation of the self. It holds the whispers of silk rustling, the gentle click of buttons and the careful smoothing of hair, all part of the daily performance of Victorian life. As you stand by the window, the quiet dignity and subtle beauty of this room linger in your mind, a space where elegance is cultivated with patience and grace. You open the door and enter the sitting room, a place where comfort and social grace meet in a delicate balance. The air here is warmer, filled with the faint scent of polished wood and fading floral upholstery. The walls are covered in patterned wallpaper, soft golds and deep greens intertwined with stylized leaves and flowers, creating a rich but calming tapestry that wraps the room in gentle colour. Heavy velvet curtains, deep burgundy with intricate tassels, frame the tall windows. The fabric pools slightly on the floor, thick and luxurious, their folds softening the sharp edges of the sunlight that filters through, casting dappled patterns onto the floorboards. A large fireplace dominates one wall, its mantel carved from dark wood with ornate detailing, Scrolls, leaves, and floral motifs intertwine in a dance of craftsmanship. Above it, a large mirror reflects the flickering light of the hearth, doubling the warmth in the room. The hearth itself holds a gentle fire, its amber glow flickering softly, sending subtle shadows dancing along the walls. Near the fireplace, a pair of high-backed armchairs upholstered in faded floral fabric invite you to sit and relax. Their cushions are plump but well worn, shaped by years of use and comfort. Between them stands a small wooden table, cluttered with a few leather-bound books, a pair of reading glasses resting atop a well-loved volume, and a delicate porcelain teacup with a hint of tea lingering inside. On the opposite wall, a tall bookshelf reaches nearly to the ceiling, packed with rows of leather-bound books and polished wooden boxes. Some titles are embossed in gold leaf, the names of poets and philosophers, novels and volumes of history, each book a doorway to another world, a companion in the quiet hours. A large woven rug covers the centre of the room, its deep reds and golds softening the creak of the floorboards. The scent of beeswax and pine lingers faintly, a reminder of the daily care this room receives to maintain its inviting atmosphere. A small writing desk stands near the window, its surface neat and orderly. A quill pen and inkwell rest ready, alongside a few sheets of fine paper, hinting at letters written here, news exchanged with distant friends or family, thoughts quietly poured out in solitude. The sitting room feels like the heart of the house, where visitors are welcomed, stories are shared, and the simple pleasure of reading is treasured. It is a space both public and intimate, filled with objects that tell of tastes, interests, and the slow passage of time. As you move toward the window, you notice the delicate lace curtains behind the velvet drapes, their intricate patterns catching the soft afternoon light. Outside, the garden's greenery peeks through, a reminder of the peaceful world beyond the walls. The sitting room is a room of balance, between light and shadow, public and private, movement and rest. Here, the household gathers, but also retreats, wrapped in the gentle embrace of familiar comfort and quiet elegance. You cross the hallway and push open the heavy door into the dining room, where formality and comfort blend seamlessly. The walls are clad in rich dark wood panelling up to chair rail height, topped with wallpaper in deep burgundy and gold damask patterns. The texture of the wallpaper is tactile, embossed with swirling leaves and floral motifs that catch the light with subtle shifts, adding depth and warmth to the room. The large oak dining table dominates the centre of the space, polished to a high sheen that reflects the soft glow of a crystal chandelier overhead. The chandelier's many facets scatter light in gentle prisms, illuminating the room with a warm golden shimmer. Heavy velvet drapes frame the tall windows, their deep crimson hues matching the wallpaper and adding a sense of richness and depth. Around the table, high-backed chairs with carved wooden legs and plush upholstery are arranged precisely, each chair set with fine china, delicate plates edged with gold leaf, polished silver cutlery, and sparkling glassware that catches the light even in the dimmer corners of the room. Atop the table, a lace tablecloth stretches smoothly, embroidered with floral patterns that mirror the wallpaper's designs. Centerpieces of fresh flowers, roses, lilies, and ivy, spill elegantly from silver bowls, their scent mingling with the faint aroma of beeswax from the polished wood surfaces. Sideboards line the walls, holding an array of serving dishes, crystal decanters filled with wine and sherry, and small porcelain ornaments. A silver candelabra stands on one sideboard, its candles lit and flickering softly, casting gentle shadows that dance along the walls. The room hums quietly with the anticipation of gathering. Meals here are ceremonies of connection, where conversation flows alongside the clinking of glasses and the passing of dishes. The dining room reflects the importance of hospitality, order and tradition in Victorian homes. You notice the fine details, the polished brass door handles gleaming faintly, the hand-carved patterns on the chair backs, the tiny floral carvings on the legs of the table, all speak of craftsmanship and care. A side window looks out onto the garden, offering a glimpse of green and light that softens the room's rich interior. The scent of polished wood, wax and fresh flowers blends with a faint trace of roasted meat and spice sauces, a sensory reminder of the room's lively purpose. As you stand quietly, the dining room feels like a stage set for both routine and celebration. A place where the family gathers not only to eat but to share moments, mark occasions and weave the fabric of daily life. Leaving the warmth of the dining room behind, you move through a narrow doorway into the pantry, a cool and orderly space dedicated to the storage and preparation of food. The walls here are painted a pale cream, their smooth surface brightened by the soft light filtering through a small window near the ceiling. Shelves line 3 walls made of sturdy pine, their surfaces worn smooth from years of use. Rows of glass jars filled with preserved fruits, cherries, strawberries and peaches, catch the light, their rich reds and golds shining like jewels. Neatly labelled tin cans, earthenware crocks and wooden boxes sit in tidy rows, each container holding dried herbs, spices and preserves, carefully tended by the household cooks. The floor is laid with simple stone tiles, cool underfoot, and a sturdy wooden table stands in the centre, its surface scarred from the daily work of peeling, chopping and sorting. On the table rests a large earthenware bowl filled with fresh apples, their skins polished smooth, ready to be peeled for a pie or stew. From the pantry, you step into the adjoining larder, a slightly cooler room with thick stone walls designed to keep perishables fresh. A window with a wooden shutter opens to the garden, allowing a faint breeze to carry in the scent of herbs and earth. Shelves here hold blocks of butter, wheels of cheese wrapped carefully in cloth, and cuts of meat hanging from iron hooks. A large wooden chest contains the root vegetables, potatoes, carrots, and turnips, stored in straw to keep them crisp. Mason jars filled with pickles and relishes line the shelves, their cloudy brine hinting at the careful preservation techniques that extend the life of summer's harvest. The larder is dimmer and cooler than the rest of the house, its atmosphere quiet and purposeful. Here, the scents of earth, salt, and smoke mingle faintly, a reminder of the seasonality and skill that govern Victorian cooking and household management. The space is organised with precision. Everything has its place, and order is maintained to ensure the smooth running of daily life. The careful storage and preparation that occur here support the more visible ceremonies of dining and social gathering. As you take in the larder's cool calm, you sense the unseen labour and knowledge that sustain the household, a web of effort behind every meal served and every family moment shared. From the cool shadows of the larder, you follow a narrow corridor leading to the butler's pantry, a small but crucial space where careful organisation and preparation take place before meals and social events. The room is lined with dark wooden cupboards and shelves, their polished surfaces reflecting the soft glow of a single oil lamp suspended from the ceiling. The air here is a mix of polished silver, wax, and faint traces of wine and vinegar. On the countertops, gleaming silver trays are carefully arranged alongside crystal decanters and fine china. The butler's tools, polishing cloths, brushes and trays, rest neatly in their places, ready for the precise work of setting and clearing the table. A small sink with a brass faucet is tucked into one corner, its porcelain basin chipped but clean, evidence of constant use. Beyond the pantry, the servants' hall stretches long and narrow, its walls painted a simple white to brighten the space. Rows of hooks hold uniforms, starched aprons, crisp shirts and polished shoes, each set meticulously maintained. Wooden benches line the walls, worn smooth by the weight of many tired bodies. This is a place of transition and preparation, where servants gather briefly between their duties, exchange quiet words, and ready themselves for the next task. The hall carries the faint echoes of footsteps and whispered conversations, a subtle reminder of the household's constant activity beneath the calm surface of the main rooms. A large clock hangs on the far wall, its ticking steady and reassuring, marking the passing of hours in this realm of service. Nearby, a small shelf holds a few simple books and a well-thumbed Bible, sources of comfort and reflection for those who labour unseen. Though utilitarian, these spaces are kept with care and pride, clean, orderly and efficient, reflecting the Victorian values of discipline and respectability. The butler's pantry and servants' hall form the hidden backbone of the home's smooth operation, a quiet world apart yet deeply connected to the family's life. As you pause in the servants' hall, you sense the rhythm of work and rest, the unspoken bonds and shared efforts that sustain the household. Here, beneath the surface of polished wood and fine fabrics, the heart of the Victorian home beats steadily and surely. The heavy door closes softly behind you, and the light dims as you step into the library. The air changes here, It is cooler still, thick with the scent of aging paper, polished mahogany, and the faintest trace of pipe smoke absorbed into the furnishings over years. The hush is immediate, as if the very walls recognise the solemnity of thought that dwells within them. Tall bookcases line the perimeter of the room, their shelves filled with rows of leather-bound volumes arranged by subject and author. Each spine is stamped with gold lettering, slightly worn at the edges, but still proud, still dignified. Titles in Latin, French, English. Volumes on natural science, theology, navigation, poetry and politics. The books speak not only of curiosity but of status, a reflection of learning, of aspiration, and the belief that knowledge is a mark of a cultivated household. A ladder on brass rails slides smoothly across the higher shelves. Above, a moulded ceiling painted in a soft ivory arches gently overhead, with rosettes and medallions picked out in pale gold. A wide bay window at the far end lets in light from the garden, filtered now through thick velvet curtains drawn halfway closed. The sunlight is soft like dust, settling on the reading chairs and the long, oriental rug spread out across the dark wooden floor. 2 armchairs sit angled near the fireplace, high-backed, upholstered in deep green leather, cracked and softened by decades of use. Between them, a small table holds a reading lamp with a frosted glass shade, its light faint but warm. A single crystal decanter rests beside a cut-glass tumbler and a book left open, a ribbon marking the page. Above the fireplace, an oil painting hangs in a carved frame, an austere portrait of a man in clerical robes, gazing out across time with a thoughtful, stern expression. The mantel below is simple. A clock with Roman numerals ticks softly, the only sound in the room aside from the occasional creak of wood settling. A globe stands in the corner, its surface slightly faded, continents marked in the names of the empires now changed or gone. It invites a slow spin, a fingertip to pause on distant places, a reminder of the age of exploration, of colonies, maps, and the quiet authority of men who ruled from study chairs far from the lands they governed. On a nearby shelf a few curiosities rest, an ammonite fossil, a magnifying glass, a quill under glass, a miniature bust of Cicero, all tokens of a mind drawn to the ordered, the ancient, the ponderous. The library is not a space for conversation, but for withdrawal, for thought, for contemplation. It is a room where the world narrows to a few measured steps between shelves, where a single book can hold an afternoon. It is private, serene, a room that honours silence. Standing in the doorway, you breathe in its quiet, its timeless calm, and you understand why it remains undisturbed. It is not merely a room, it is a state of mind, built in brick and shelf and shadow. You turn down a quieter corridor and follow the pale daylight filtering beneath the doorway. When you open it, you're bathed in softness. The morning room greets you with light diffused through muslin curtains, a pale golden glow that seems to float just above the patterned carpet. This is a room made for beginnings, calm, unhurried, and hushed like a breath before speech. The walls are painted a cool duck-egg blue, softened by years of sun and careful upkeep. Watercolour landscapes hang in slim gilt frames, each depicting a quiet scene. Pastoral meadows, rivers, sheep on hillsides. Their colours are gentle, their brushwork loose, like memories more than depictions. In contrast to the formality of the dining room or the grandeur of the library, the furniture here is smaller, more delicate. A chaise longue upholstered in pale floral damask rests beneath the window, its curved form like a sigh. A small occasional table sits beside it, holding a bone china teacup on a saucer, a silver spoon carefully laid across the rim, and a shallow dish of candied violets, untouched. Near the hearth the fire is low but steady. The mantelpiece is lined with small porcelain figurines, a pair of doves, a seated lady with a fan, a shepherdess with a lamb, and a clock with a mother-of-pearl face ticking in time with the quiet morning. On the floor before the hearth lies a faded but well-kept rug with a subtle floral pattern that echoes the curtain's embroidery. A writing desk stands in the corner, its curved legs painted ivory, its surface bare except for a blotter and a glass ink pot with a pearl-handled pen laid neatly beside it. This is a place for correspondence, where letters begin, sometimes never finished, where thoughts are shaped in ink as tea cools and birdsong drifts in from the garden. The room smells faintly of rosewater and starch, of dust warmed by sunlight, and of something sweet. perhaps a sachet of lavender hidden in a drawer. There are books here too, though fewer than in the library, mostly novels, slim volumes with embossed covers in shades of mauve, olive, and pale grey. Some rest on the edge of a settee, marked with ribbons, gently dog-eared. These stories are companions chosen not to impress but to ease. The morning room is a space of quiet ritual. It is where lace is mended, letters are read, embroidery progresses stitch by patient stitch. It is feminine, but not frivolous. A room for gathering thought, for turning inward and pausing before the day's tide rises. The walls do not echo in here. Sounds are caught in the upholstery, in the velvet of the drapes, in the folds of a shawl draped over the back of a chair. Even footsteps are muffled. There is no rush, no call. The very air moves slowly, as if in sympathy with the soul of the room itself. Standing in the morning room, you understand that this was never intended for entertaining, or display, or ceremony. It is a retreat from all of that, a space carved gently into the larger structure of the home, like a breath taken between sentences. You ascend the carpeted staircase slowly, one hand grazing the polished banister, and at the top the air changes, lighter somehow, quieter, though not silent. You turn down a modest hallway lit by a single gas sconce, and open a narrow door tucked between larger, grander chambers. Inside, the nursery waits. It is a room neither solemn nor decorative in the same way as the parlours or dining spaces below, but carefully tended all the same. The wallpaper is faded with time, though its pattern of small climbing ivy vines and pale blue birds is still clear in the daylight. It stretches softly over the slanted walls and ceilings, warming the space with subtle pattern. Beneath your feet lies a thick wool rug, its once vivid colours worn to gentler hues, but still warm, still soft to the tread. Toys lie where they've been left. Wooden soldiers propped against the legs of a cradle. A china doll reclined in a miniature rocking chair, her hair slightly askew. A cloth ball rests in the far corner, its seams hand-stitched and fraying at the edges. There is a cot near the wall, painted white, with a knitted blanket folded neatly at one end. A rocking horse stands nearby, one stirrup slightly askew, its mane made of real horsehair, stiff now with age. The carved wooden base has scratch marks where little feet once pushed off, year after year. In the corner by the fireplace is the nursemaid's chair, low to the floor with arms worn smooth by time, and the rhythm of hands rocking, comforting, reaching. A knitted shawl is draped over its back, and beside it stands a wicker basket filled with mending. Small socks, woolen jumpers, cotton petticoats with frayed hems waiting to be hemmed again. The fireplace is unlit, but its grate is clean, ready to be used when the air cools. A brass fireguard shaped like a curling fern stands before it, casting long lines of shadow across the rug. Above the mantel, there is a faded sampler stitched by a small hand, alphabet letters in cross-stitch, a simple flower border, and the date, 1856. Books are stacked in a corner shelf, their cloth bindings worn. Some contain nursery rhymes, others stories with woodblock illustrations of animals, ships, and curious children in pinafores and frock coats. One lies open on the floor as if dropped mid-story. There is a washstand too, more modest than those in the formal bedrooms, with a jug and basin, both white porcelain with a simple blue line around the edge. A flannel is folded nearby, and the scent of lavender soap lingers faintly, mingling with the smell of wool and chalk dust. Though simple, the nursery is not stark. Every item, every surface speaks of care. This is not a room for display but for nurture, a space where time moves differently. Days measured not in hours but in naps, lessons, games, tears, and just as childhood is both swift and endless, the room holds both movement and memory, echoes of laughter, the rhythm of lullabies, the soft hush of a caretaker's whisper as night settles in. As you stand quietly, you feel the worn warmth of the space, the settledness of something long used and loved, and you understand how the Victorian home made room for childhood, not with extravagance, but with rhythm, order, and gentle attention. You turn down a wide corridor softened by a thick carpet runner, and the sound of your steps vanishes into its weave. You reach a broad door with a porcelain handle, turn it gently and step inside. The room welcomes you not with grandeur, but with calm. A private world, drawn inward, self-contained. The wallpaper here is more elaborate. Damask vines in deep burgundy curling over a taupe background, their outlines softened by the fading of time and firelight. The windows, tall and sash-framed, are dressed in thick velvet drapes lined with cream muslin. They're half-drawn, allowing a quiet, filtered light to slip in and settle across the carpet in muted gold. At the centre of the room, beneath a plaster medallion from which hangs a pale glass oil lamp, stands the bed. It is a large four-poster, carved of dark walnut, with barley twist columns rising to support a canopy of gathered chintz. The bedclothes are layered, fine linen sheets, a quilted counterpane stitched with small geometric patterns, and at the foot, a folded woolen blanket in rich navy blue. 2 plump pillows rest at the head, encased in lace-trimmed cases, slightly creased from use. Beside the bed is a nightstand with a drawer and a small shelf. On top sits a candlestick holder with a stub of beeswax candle, a porcelain pitcher of water, and a pair of round spectacles folded and set to one side. A slim volume of poetry lies face down beside them, left there from the night before. A large chest of drawers stands across the room, its brass handles polished to a soft gleam. A silver-backed brush set lies carefully placed on top, alongside a small bowl of pins and a glass perfume bottle with a glass stopper. Above it hangs a mirror with a foxed surface, its edges beginning to cloud with age. To one side of the fireplace there's a dressing screen, its panels covered in a faded floral fabric that echoes the print of the bed canopy. Behind it, a modest washstand is set against the wall. The jug and basin are porcelain, decorated with a trailing honeysuckle design, and a sliver of rose-scented soap rests in a dish beside them. On the mantel itself the items are few but intentional. A dried sprig of lavender, a miniature portrait in a silver frame, and a small carriage clock that ticks softly in the stillness. Its rhythm fills the room like a second heartbeat. The colours in the room are rich but gentle. Ochres, creams, claret, and soft mossy greens. Textures abound: damask, linen, velvet, wool, all chosen not only for comfort but to insulate, to soften, to quiet the edges of the outside world. In this bedroom, there is ceremony in the everyday. Brushes set neatly after use, slippers placed side by side, the quilt folded precisely each morning. A Victorian bedroom is not simply a place for sleep. It is a stage for small rituals. The washing of hands, the buttoning of boots, the reading of scripture, the silent folding of clothes. A private order preserved. It is here that the performance of the day is gently set aside. Voices fall away, corsets are unlaced, the fire is drawn low, and the quiet of the self, removed from parlours and callers and obligations, is finally allowed to surface. This space is a retreat not of leisure but of slow necessity, carefully shaped, deeply kept. You feel its gravity, not heavy, but enveloping, like the press of warm fabric against the chill, like silence that listens back. The door to the guest bedroom opens with a soft creak, and the air inside feels faintly cooler than in the rest of the house. This is not because it is less cared for, but because it is untouched, waiting, preserved in quiet anticipation. No one lives in this room. It is a room kept for someone else. A possibility, not a routine. A room that wears formality like a veil, draped but never oppressive. The wallpaper is lighter than in the family chambers, ivory with a pattern of soft grey blossoms and faint green stems, understated and universally pleasing. Its lack of personal touch is intentional. The design is selected to soothe, not provoke, to welcome without revealing. The bed is slightly smaller than in the master room, but still generous. It has no canopy, but a tall curved headboard upholstered in pale damask. The mattress is firm and neatly made, its surface undisturbed, layered with pressed linens and a coverlet that lies smooth as still water. A small square cushion rests at the centre, embroidered with an abstract floral design, hand-stitched but not intimate. Beside the bed is a washstand similar to the others, but this one has a fresh towel already laid out, folded precisely, and a cake of lemon soap that has never been used. The jug and basin are unchipped, their glaze still bright, blue and white porcelain with a pastoral scene repeating around the rim. Cows grazing near a stream, a figure crossing a footbridge, all enclosed in an oval of vines. A writing desk stands near the window, its surface spotless, containing a blotter, a pot of ink, and a small stack of creamy writing paper with a fountain pen laid perfectly parallel. A carafe of water with a matching tumbler rests on a small tray, alongside a ceramic bell with a delicate silver ringer. Nothing appears in use, everything is ready. The fireplace here is smaller too, with a grate free of ash. On the mantel sits a vase of dried lavender, carefully arranged, and a single brass candlestick, one taper, unused. A miniature painting hangs above it, showing a calm harbour at dusk. The brushstrokes are soft and deliberately vague, evoking distance, not closeness. The curtains are a pale olive green with a silk lining, tied back with tasselled cords. From the window the garden is visible. Trimmed hedges, a gravel path, the tops of rose bushes. The light here feels quiet, as if stepping carefully across the floorboards. There is a wardrobe, its doors closed. Inside, perhaps, a spare blanket or two, a hanger, a solitary lavender sachet meant to gently scent the borrowed air. Nothing of the family is stored here. No books with dedications, no drawers filled with old gloves or letters. This room is curated not for the self, but for the idea of another, and yet, in its quiet perfection, there is a tenderness, a care for the comfort of someone unknown. The furnishings may not tell a personal story, but they are a sign of welcome. To enter such a space is to be received. Gently, without intrusion. You look once more at the bed, still as a pond in winter. It is a place made ready not by use but by intention. The readiness itself is the offering. The air cools as you descend the back staircase. The walls here are stripped of ornament, painted in a utilitarian cream, once bright but now softened by time and touch. Each step creaks faintly beneath your feet, though these sounds would go unnoticed during the bustle of a working day. The descent is quiet, but not solemn, simply honest. At the bottom of the stairs the corridor narrows, its stone floor swept clean but uneven in places. The light changes too, more natural, but filtered through frosted windows or borrowed from lanterns. A low door opens into the heart of the servants' quarters, and you step inside a space that breathes with warmth, effort, and human rhythm. The first room is the common room, the place where maids and footmen gather during the rare moments when their hands are idle. The walls are whitewashed, not papered, and bare save for a small clock and a wooden crucifix. A scrubbed pine table stands at the centre, surrounded by mismatched chairs, their rungs smoothed from years of use. One chair has a cushion tied to it, an unspoken sign of someone's habitual seat. On the table lies a sewing basket, open, with threads wound around wooden bobbins and a half-finished mending project, folded neatly beside it. A candle stub sits in a chipped ceramic holder, along with a plate bearing the last crumbs of a shared scone. The air smells faintly of starch, soap and ash. There are pegs on the walls, some with shawls or aprons still hanging, others empty. Boots line the far corner, placed neatly despite their scuffs and wear. A large hearth anchors the room, though the fire has burned low, leaving only a bed of embers and the faintest glow. Above it, a drying line is strung, where cloths hang suspended, stiffening slowly in the warm air. Adjoining the room are the sleeping quarters, narrow and spare, but kept tidy with care. You step into one of the chambers. The ceiling slopes low, and the bed is narrow, iron-framed, with a ticking mattress and a coverlet sewn from old scraps of fabric in muted, faded colours. A small wooden chest sits at the foot, likely containing the few private belongings its occupant owns. The walls are bare, save for a small print of a rural scene pinned beside the bed. On the windowsill rests a folded kerchief, a wooden comb, and a glass bottle holding a single dried flower, perhaps kept as a memory, or simply for the presence of something gentle. The window itself is modest, looking out toward the mews and the kitchen garden. The curtains are plain linen, drawn part way to filter the morning sun. There is no wallpaper here, no gilt, no velvet. But there is order, cleanliness, the effort of keeping things intact. A sense of pride that lives not in embellishment, but in care. Even in simplicity, the room is not without feeling. It is lived in, not adorned, but it speaks. Returning to the hallway, you pass the laundry room with its wringer and steaming tubs, and the scullery with rows of hanging copper pans, their surfaces burnished from constant polishing. These rooms, too, tell the story of a home, not through decoration, but through maintenance, through the invisible labour that makes the rest of the house possible. The servants' quarters are not meant to impress. They are not curated, not written about. Yet they are more honest in their purpose than any drawing room or morning parlour. They are built not to display beauty, but to sustain it, quietly, consistently, without recognition. You feel the humility of these rooms, not in shame, but in groundedness. There is no performance here, only function softened by the human need for a bit of comfort. Worn quilts, a cherished cup, a flower tucked into a jar. The heavy back door clicks softly behind you as you step out into the garden. The air is cooler here, brushed with the faint green scent of earth and cut grass, tinged with the gentlest sweetness of something in bloom. It is the sort of garden that whispers rather than dazzles, walled and enclosed, not for grand displays but for steady delight, month after month, season after season. You walk along a gravel path, your shoes crunching softly, edged with trimmed box hedges that have been shaped into low, patient borders. Their form is not ostentatious, no elaborate mazes, no topiary beasts, but quietly orderly, forming a living frame around the deeper corners of the grounds. Along the sides grow planted beds, and here the decoration is subtler, slower. Rows of lavender, foxglove and bleeding heart sway gently in the breeze. The colours are deliberate, deep purples and faded pinks, rust reds, soft whites, chosen to evoke mood as much as beauty. Victorian spoken flowers, and the garden reflects that language. Each plant, each corner, was curated to whisper something. Memory, hope, faith, sorrow. Near the small pond, water lilies drift in slow circles, their leaves cupped and quiet. A wooden bench is placed nearby, its iron legs rusting slightly where they meet the damp gravel, but still firm, still used. You can imagine someone seated there with a shawl and a book, watching bees move from bloom to bloom, not reading at all. Past a brick archway veiled in ivy is the conservatory. The door clicks shut behind you, and instantly the air thickens and warms. Glass panes mist lightly around the edges, holding the sun close, even in winter. The space smells of citrus and peat, of damp clay pots and fern fronds. It is a place made not just to grow, but to cultivate. Exotic plants brought from distant parts of the empire, miniature orange trees, palms and rare orchids, each one a living emblem of taste, learning and reach. Here, the floor is tiled in checkered black and white, often scrubbed to a quiet sheen. Wooden slatted benches line the walls, painted white, though peeling in places. Watering cans rest on the floor, their handles worn smooth, and gardening shears hang on hooks, carefully arranged according to size. There is a shelf of seed tins labelled in faded ink, and pots stacked high in corners, waiting for their next resident. In the centre stands a wrought iron table with a marble top, used for tending and pruning, though now it holds a shallow bowl filled with rainwater and flower heads, spent blooms floating like forgotten thoughts. A journal lies open beside it, the handwriting small and neat, notes on light, temperature, and the health of a rose cutting brought from abroad last season. Even here, decoration meets discipline. Beauty does not arrive uninvited. It is grown, watched, trimmed, coaxed. Though the conservatory is a practical space, it carries a delicate reverence. It was more than a greenhouse. For the Victorian home, it was a theatre of vitality, proof that one could shape the wild into something genteel, manageable and ever-blooming. Nature, harnessed, yet not silenced. You lean lightly against the wooden doorframe, gazing out through the steamed glass at the garden paths beyond. There is a kind of peace in this place, not the silence of an untouched parlour, but the living quiet of petals unfolding and leaves brushing the panes when the wind stirs. It is a different kind of decoration, one that grows from patience and gentle obsession, less about impressing and more about possessing, life, colour, rhythm, return. You leave the conservatory slowly, not hurried. The sound of gravel returns beneath your feet. The garden bends with the light. The home, even here in its margins, speaks softly. The staircase to the attic is steep, each step creaking with long memory. The banister is narrower than elsewhere in the house, the wood unvarnished, smoothed not by polish, but by hands carrying boxes, trunks, bundles. This is not a public space. It has no guests. It answers only to time. At the top, the door groans faintly as you press it open. The attic breathes out a faint gust of cool, dry air, filled with the scent of old paper, pine, dust, and fabric gone soft from long storage. Light enters only through a small dormer window, casting angled lines across the wooden floorboards. Dust motes drift in the beam like ash in still water. The room itself is large, open, with low eaves and beams hung with cobwebs. You do not feel unwelcome, only as though you've stepped into a space long forgotten by the rhythm of daily life, a space between memory and use, a museum without labels. Time thickens here, like honey. Trunks line the walls, some leather-bound, others simply made of wood, with iron latches and initials carved into their lids. One stands slightly ajar, and you lift the lid gently. Inside, rolls of faded chintz, its pattern once vibrant. Roses climbing trellises, greens turned tea-brown with age. Beneath it, curtain rods wrapped in velvet, the fringe unravelled in places. You run your fingers along it, and it leaves a faint trace of dust on your skin. Nearby, a gilt picture frame leans against the wall, its canvas long removed, the gold leaf flaking where the corners curl. Once it must have surrounded something lovely, a portrait perhaps. Now it frames only the air. Next to it stands a broken sconce, its brass stem bent, a ghost of ornamentation in silence. You walk further in. The wardrobe door is open just enough to reveal dresses in storage, crinolines, bodices, sleeves stiff with age, not costumes, not displays. These were worn, danced in, sat in drawing rooms with. They carry the scent of camphor and something floral, long faded, maybe rosewater or lavender tucked between the folds. On a shelf there are boxes marked in pencil, winter drapes, dining room trim, parlour shears, old. You open one and find tassels, delicate and intricate, their cords tangled in nests. Some are dulled by time, their gold turned to rusted straw, but others gleam still, hidden beneath layers. They were not thrown away, only set aside. The attic holds not just objects, but styles, periods of the home's history layered in fabric and finishings. Wallpaper rolls, once chosen with care, now stand propped like forgotten blueprints of lives already redecorated. A gaslight fixture rests in a crate, wires curled like the tendrils of an uprooted vine. At the far end, beneath the lowest beam, is a child's rocking chair. Very small, white painted, the seat cracked. It is set beside a box of toys, wooden alphabet blocks, a one-eyed stuffed dog, a tin rattle with its paint flaked away. Decoration for children, perhaps never seen beyond this room, tucked away when grown feet no longer needed them. The attic is full, but not cluttered. Its silence is not empty, only waiting. Everything here once had a place in the home, on walls, in corners, around hearths, and was loved, touched, chosen. Now they exist in a quieter state, not absence, but memory, decoration in hibernation. You sit for a moment on an old steamer trunk, the leather cool beneath you, and listen. The floor creaks softly. Somewhere below the house breathes on, but here the past settles like dust in the corners, not heavy, not forgotten, simply still. The morning air outside is damp with coal smoke and the faint scent of hot ink, and the city awakens in a different rhythm from the quiet house you've wandered. You walk slowly along narrow streets where stone buildings are darkened with soot, and chimneys vent a low, curling breath into the sky. Here is where the walls of the home begin. Not in drawing rooms or parlours, but in the workshops of the Victorian city, in rooms where the paper hangs not as decoration, but in process. You step through an open door beneath a painted sign that reads W&S Bradbury, Paper Stainers and Designers. Inside, the light is dim, filtered through tall windows clouded with dust. The smell is distinct. Paper, linseed oil, glue, and pigment ground into thick pastes. You pass long wooden tables where sheets of wallpaper are stretched out in parallel rows. Each one is printed by hand using carved wooden blocks, each block a part of the pattern, one for the leaves, one for the stems, another for the gold outline that gives it depth. The blocks themselves rest on open shelves, hundreds of them, their surfaces stained with use. They are masterpieces in their own way, carved with slow patience, intricate curves, delicate spirals, florals that will repeat across parlours and stairwells in homes far removed from this factory air. A man in a rolled-up shirt sleeve lifts a block, aligns it by eye, and presses it to the paper with the slow pressure of someone who has done this movement 1,000 times. The rhythm is gentle: dip, press, lift, breathe. Then again. You follow the paper as it's hung to dry from long racks above, a soft rustle of damp sheets brushing one another in the low air. The patterns vary, some with medallions and acanthus leaves, others striped or trellised, even imitation tapestry and marble for those who cannot afford the real, the illusion of grandeur handmade in rows. Beyond this room is a small annex where colours are mixed. Bowls of crushed pigment, indigo, vermilion, ochre, rest in ordered lines beside glass bottles and brushes. A recipe book lies open on the table, stained and curling at the corners. Each colour has a formula, each tone a name. Pompeian red, arsenic green, Parisian plum. They are not just colours, they are moods, intentions, the atmosphere of a room determined in ounces and hours. Further on you pass into another building, a furniture workshop filled with the scent of shavings and varnish. The air is dry and warm and the floorboards are layered with sawdust. A lathe turns slowly, shaping a newel post for a grand staircase. Rows of chairs stand with their seats unpadded, waiting to be covered in velvet or leather. The walls are lined with chisels and planes, the tools as polished as the pieces they help form. At a nearby bench, a man is carving the back of a walnut armchair. The design is floral, rising in graceful arcs from the centre. His hand is steady, and he works by feel as much as sight. He doesn't look up as you pass. The work requires attention, and every curl of wood he lifts away will one day sit in a sunlit bay window, or beside a reading table, perhaps unnoticed, but always present. In a side room, an upholsterer is fitting horsehair into a cushion. He works with care, hands thick with muscle, his apron dusted with fibres and tacks. The fabric, a deep green damask, is stretched tight, pinned, folded, and sewn with invisible stitches. The chair takes on its shape slowly, one layer at a time. You begin to understand that the home is not a stage set, arranged from nowhere. It is made. Not just in the choices of the wealthy, but in the touch of these makers, these builders. Their hands shape the backdrop of quiet dinners, rainy afternoons, children's first steps. Their names may not be known, but their labour is there, in every frieze, every settee, every papered wall that frames a life. Outside again, the city sounds pressed gently in. Horses pass on cobbled streets. A woman walks by with a folded bolt of calico tied with twine. Everything you've seen, the patterns, the trims, the carved legs and pleated valances, exists because someone, somewhere, brought it into being. You walk back toward the house now, and you carry this with you, the knowledge that the decoration of the Victorian home was not born in stillness or silence. It was made with breath and movement, from pigment and glue, from muscle and patience. The door closes behind you with the gentle hush of felted hinges, and you step back into the drawing room. But this time, it's not quite the same. The room is still warm, still deeply ornamented in the vocabulary of Victorian comfort, but here and there things have begun to lean forward, subtly, quietly, into what will come next. The heavy velvet curtains still hang at the window, but the trim is simpler now, the colour more muted. Where once there might have been dense floral brocade, you now see lighter damask, or even cretonne, cotton printed with Japanese motifs, cranes and cherry blossoms etched in soft outline. The air is still but expectant, as though the room is holding its breath between centuries. On the walls the wallpaper has shifted. Gone are the dark medallions and heavy scrolling foliage. In their place, a quieter pattern, cream background, thin lines of gold, and stylized sunflowers or geometric vines. You recognise the hand of William Morris, or at least his influence, the movement toward the natural, the handmade, the quietly radical belief that beauty should be honest and crafted. The furniture, too, whispers of transition. The horsehair stuffed armchairs remain, but a new piece stands near the hearth, a low table with curved lines and inlaid wood in lighter tones. It does not match. That is new, a deliberate mismatching, a move away from the heavy symmetrical suites of earlier in the century. The table is aesthetic, designed not just to serve but to be looked at. It speaks of art for its own sake. You run your fingers along the spines of the books on the mahogany shelves. Ruskin, Pugin, Wilde, writers who have begun to question the old ways, not just in literature but in fabric and wallpaper and light. You pick up a slim volume bound in green linen, its cover stamped with a gold peacock feather, and open to a page on domestic beauty. The page falls gently back into place, soft with use. On the mantel, under the ticking of the clock, is a blue and white vase from Japan, its form simple and graceful. 10 years ago it might have seemed foreign. Now it is admired, collected, paired perhaps with an oil painting in the Pre-Raphaelite style, a woman in medieval dress haloed in ivy, her eyes turned towards something unseen. The lighting in the room has changed too. No longer entirely reliant on gaslight, the house has begun to experiment. A lamp stands near the writing desk, electrical, with a silk shade gathered at the top. It emits a different kind of glow, not warmer or brighter, just quieter, more personal. Light for reading, not for grand illumination. At the far end of the room, a new addition. A small cane chair with a curved back and no upholstery. Its form is unfamiliar at first, until you realise it's continental, Viennese perhaps, Thonet. A chair born of steam and innovation, mass-produced yet beautiful in its simplicity. Another signal. The world is expanding, and so are its tastes. The entire room holds these contradictions. The Victorian love of detail and fullness, but also the desire for clarity, freshness, even restraint. Decoration is no longer only a display of wealth or piety. It has become a language of philosophy, an argument, a response. You notice that the floor is partly covered now with a new kind of rug, lighter, looser in pattern. It's not the thick Persian pile of earlier years, but a woven mat of jute or coir, possibly from India. It rustles faintly underfoot, its edges curled slightly from use. Practical, imported, fashionable. On the writing desk there's a pamphlet resting near the inkstand. The House Beautiful, an essay on the decoration of homes, dated 1897. You skim it and see phrases like harmony with purpose and honest labour in humble form. Words that would have seemed strange in the lavishness of the 1850s drawing room now feel gentle, guiding, almost inevitable. And yet, for all the change, the room does not reject its past. The coal fire still glows in its ornate cast-iron grate. The family portrait above the mantel remains in its gilt frame. The clocks still chime the same hour. But something is loosening. Something is preparing to shift. The drawing room, once the stage of rigid order and public life, has become more inward, more reflective. It does not need to impress as loudly anymore. It simply wants to be lived in, to be pleasing to the people who inhabit it. Decoration here begins to touch the soul. As you move through the house, the air feels lighter, less burdened by the heavy drapery and dense ornamentation of earlier decades. You find yourself in a room where the light falls evenly, soft and golden, caught between the waning afternoon and the coming evening. This is a place that has embraced simplicity, not starkness, but a calm honesty. Here, decoration is no longer a show, but a conversation. The walls are clad not in wallpaper, but in handcrafted wood panelling, polished to a soft glow. The grain of the oak is visible, celebrated rather than hidden beneath layers of paint or paper. It feels warm to the touch, like the skin of an old friend. Above, a woven tapestry hangs, its colours muted earth tones, depicting a scene of rural life. Fields, cottages, and wildflowers swaying in a breeze you cannot feel but almost hear. You recognise the influence of the arts and crafts movement, which has gained momentum as a quiet rebellion against industrial excess. The furniture here is sturdy and honest. Chairs and tables with clean lines, joints visible, nails replaced by clever wooden pegs. Each piece bears the mark of its maker, whether a simple carved leaf or a small signature hidden under the seat. You run your fingers over a spindle on a chair's back, smooth from use, and feel the weight of the craftswoman or craftsman's time embedded in every curve. The upholstery is linen, homespun and slightly rough, dyed in natural colours, saffron, indigo, madder red, rather than the artificial brilliancy of earlier textiles. It is modest, but beautiful. In one corner sits a tall cabinet with glass doors, its shelves displaying ceramics and pottery, each piece unique, handmade. The glazes swirl in blues and greens like pools of water, reflecting light softly. These are not mass-produced. They are objects cherished for their imperfection and individuality. On the mantel, a collection of hand-carved wooden candlesticks stand next to a simple clock, its face uncluttered, the hands thin and delicate. The flame flickers gently in the quiet air, casting dancing shadows on the walls, giving life to the room without overwhelming it. You notice the presence of books here too. Volumes on gardening, poetry, and the philosophy of art. A copy of William Morris's essays lies open on a side table, the margins filled with notes written in a careful, flowing hand. The words speak of a return to beauty through honest labour and the value of the handmade in a world increasingly ruled by machines. The light coming through the window softens further as you stand and look out. Outside, a garden stretches with wildflowers and herbs growing in neat beds, a gentle rebellion against formal parterres. The scent of lavender drifts in on the breeze, mingling with the faint smokiness of a nearby hearth. This room, this space, feels like a promise, that homes can be places of meaning and care, not just display and wealth. That decoration can be rooted in respect for materials and people, in the patience of the craftsman's hand, and the quiet pride of the woman who chooses what surrounds her family. As you prepare to leave this room, you carry with you the echo of a philosophy, that beauty is not something to be bought or flaunted, but something to be made, nurtured, and lived with every day. You step softly down the hallway, following the muted echoes of footsteps and the faint, comforting scent of burning wood. The nursery lies just beyond a door painted a soft cream colour, its surface worn slightly at the edges from hands small and eager. Opening it, you find yourself in a room suffused with gentle light from a curtained window, where shadows stretch long and slow. The walls are painted a pale blue, chosen for calmness, though you can imagine in other homes soft pinks or warm creams, colours believed to soothe young minds. Around the room, delicate stencils of stars and floral motifs mark the walls. A child's first introduction to decoration, not overwhelming but gentle, almost like whispered lullabies in paint. A small wooden cradle rests near the hearth, its curves worn smooth by years of rocking. Its bedding is carefully embroidered linen, stitched with scenes of animals and trees, crafted by patient hands, perhaps those of a mother, an aunt, or a neighbour. Nearby, a knitted shawl drapes over a chair, its wool slightly fuzzy, dyed with natural colours from the garden. The nursery's furniture is modest but sturdy. Wooden rocking chairs, low shelves filled with simple wooden toys, building blocks painted in muted reds and blues, and a collection of well-loved storybooks bound in cloth and leather. These objects carry the warmth of hands that touch them daily, and the soft patina of care. A rug covers the floor, its pattern faded but still intricate. Small flowers woven into a field of green, reminiscent of the countryside that many Victorian families long to preserve in memory if not in reality. The texture is coarse but comforting beneath your feet. You notice too small decorative touches designed not for display but for affection and comfort. A paper garland of stars hangs from the ceiling, gently swaying in the faint draught. A framed print of a mother bird feeding her chicks hangs low on the wall, meant to teach love and nurture. The nursery is a room shaped by intention, where beauty is a soft, constant presence. Moving through the house, you find the kitchen next, where the air is warmer, filled with the aromas of herbs, fresh bread, and simmering stew. Here, decoration is quieter, functional but still thoughtful. Copper pots hang in neat rows, their polished surfaces catching the light and glinting softly. Shelves hold jars of preserves labelled in careful handwriting, ribbons tied around the necks adding a delicate touch. The hearth is the room's heart, its brickwork blackened by years of fires. Above it, a simple wooden mantel bears a few treasured items: a clock, a small vase of dried flowers, and a hand-painted ceramic bowl filled with fruit. The kitchen table, sturdy and worn, is covered with a linen cloth patterned in checked red and white, its edges trimmed with lace. Despite its practical purpose, the kitchen is a space of warmth and welcome, a place where decoration is less about opulence and more about the comfort of home. It reflects the rhythms of daily life, the cycles of work and rest, the presence of family. As you pause by the window, you see a glimpse of the garden beyond, the source of many ingredients and colours. Herbs grow in pots on the sill, and wildflowers nod gently in the breeze. The house, in these rooms, feels alive. Decoration here is not separate from living but woven into it, quietly supporting the household's pulse. You step back into the hallway, carrying with you the knowledge that the beauty of the Victorian home is not only found in grand parlours or elaborately carved furniture, but in these intimate, lived-in spaces where form and function meet in subtle harmony. You find yourself once again at the front door of the house, stepping out onto the porch where the evening air is cool and still. The sun has set beyond the rooftops, and the sky holds the faintest glow of twilight. Behind you, the house rests quietly, its rooms a mosaic of styles and stories, each layer gently folding into the next, like pages in a book nearing its end. As the 19th century draws to a close, the decoration of the home begins to change, not with sudden upheaval, but through slow, deliberate evolution. The heavy ornamentation of early Victorian days, the rich textures and dense patterns, start to give way to lighter, more personal styles. Influences from abroad, Japan, the Middle East and across Europe, continue to weave their way into fabric and form, expanding the vocabulary of beauty. In the parlours and dining rooms, you notice the gradual simplification of shapes, a move toward comfort and function without sacrificing grace. Upholstered chairs grow softer, less formal, inviting guests to linger longer. Tables and cabinets become more streamlined, while still holding on to the craftsmanship and detail that speak of care and skill. The wallpaper patterns now favour softer colours and simpler motifs, ivy leaves, sunflowers and gentle scrolls, reflecting the growing influence of the arts and crafts movement, and early modernists who sought beauty in truth and utility. The dominance of factory-made goods softens as a renewed appreciation for handcrafted objects emerges, a dialogue between progress and tradition. In the kitchens and nurseries, practicality continues to guide decoration, but with a new emphasis on cleanliness and light. Porcelain and enamel surfaces replace darker woods, and spaces are planned to be brighter, more hygienic, and more efficient. Yet even here, small touches of beauty endure. A hand-stitched curtain, a painted tile, a carefully chosen vase. You reflect on the cultural shifts rippling through society, the changing roles of women, the rise of the middle class, advances in technology like electricity and indoor plumbing, all of which ripple into the design of homes. Decoration becomes not just a statement of status, but an expression of identity, values, and evolving lifestyles. Standing on the threshold, you feel the house breathe with the stories it holds, of makers and owners, of quiet afternoons and festive evenings, of hope and nostalgia. The Victorian home was never static. It was a living canvas, shaped by hands and hearts across decades. And though the century has turned, its legacy whispers on, in the pattern of a wallpaper, the curve of a chair, the warmth of a hearth. The homes we inhabit today carry traces of this past, echoes of a time when decoration was both art and comfort, an intimate language spoken through objects and spaces. You take one last look at the house as the night deepens, the windows glowing softly like watchful eyes. The story of how people decorated their home as you gently close the door behind you, carrying with you the quiet stories of these homes and the hands that shaped them. May you feel a soft calm settle around you, like the warm glow of a hearth in the evening. Let your thoughts drift slowly, as delicate and intricate as the patterns on those Victorian wallpapers, and may your mind find rest in the gentle rhythm of past lives and whispered histories. Sleep well, wrapped in comfort and quiet wonder, until morning light. Mess in the 1800s lingers, not as a closed chapter, but as a foundation beneath the rooms we call our own.